probably some supplier commitments there that they have to deal with. The two EVs that they had on the market, or still have in the market, the F-150 Lightning and the Mustang Mach-E. These are vehicles that they had a battery pack that they were buying. They didn't have a lot of commonality, really any commonality with other vehicles in the lineup, so they were very expensive to make. So I think all of these things you add up, and it was an expensive vehicle program for them. In GM's case, they had one platform that you could just, for the battery, that you could just make in different sizes, and a couple of battery plants. They hadn't built the fourth one yet in Indiana, so there were things that they had planned but didn't do yet. So you add these things together, and I think Ford just had an expensive program that they then had to write down. GM's, look, $7.6 billion is nothing to sneeze at. That's a lot of money they had to write down. There could be more to come, but the worst appears to be behind them from write-downs.
David, thank you very much for this. And by the way, recommend David's book called Charging Ahead, perfect for this moment, about GM Nirvana, the reinvention of an American icon. David Welch, thank you very much. Another set of earnings we have this morning, American Airlines. They missed estimates for the fourth quarter, but it did give a bullish outlook for the year. Bloomberg Chief Global Aviation Correspondent Sid Phillip joins us now. Sid, I watched the stock market reaction when these earnings came out. It plunges and then it rebounds. There was already a little bit of mixed messages coming from a lot of the big operators so far to start the year. What message did you get from American?
So American is sort of they're looking to cash in on the same trend that has propelled United and Delta Airlines. They're sort of focusing on premium, they're focusing on upgrading their cabins, they're also focusing on adding Wi-Fi to the planes, and they think that will bring in the big spenders. At the same time, American Airlines has struggled with both the government shutdown as well as the most recent Storm Fern in New York and the US this week. And with more bad weather on the way, we still don't know what the impact of the weather will be. I mean, they talked about how just the last storm alone forced them to cancel about 9,000 flights, and I estimate it'll cost them about $150 to $200 million. So there is a lot of uncertainty at the moment, especially with weather. There's also uncertainty about demand, but the airline's hoping that pivoting to premium and focusing on those premium customers will continue to sort of help them go forward.
We look at often the 5-year picture for any stock, just because of the comp function that is a default, and I think it's a decent window to compare. American has done far worse than United, and even worse than Delta. So what's wrong with this airline? Is it that it doesn't deal well with storms? Is it that they haven't been cashing in previously on the premium passenger, or why haven't they been doing as well as their competitors?
So American's got a multitude of things that they sort of worked on, including the fact that they did sort of focus on premium and on business travelers primarily, and post-pandemic business travel demand was slower to recover than the premium leisure travel trend that both Delta and United sort of focused on. In terms of the storm and the impact of the storm, American has a large domestic operation, and they have a lot of operations to regional airports, and those were harder hit, especially as some of those airports weren't really equipped to deal with such bad weather, and so therefore the effect was more pronounced.
Sid, what's going on with JetBlue? This was supposed to be an airline that was righting the ship. Wrong metaphor for a plane, I realize. But they were supposed to be investing more into their premium travel. What went wrong? I mean, 5% loss in the pre-market after earnings. That's pretty painful.
Yeah, I mean, JetBlue is sort of still trying to pivot and still trying to sort of figure out what their business model is. I mean, the airline has sort of tried to go after the premium travel, especially as ultra low-cost carriers face customer sort of hesitation in terms of bookings. I mean, remember, every CEO has been talking about this K-shaped economy and this K-shaped booking curve, where people at the top end of the market tend to be booking holidays, while people at the bottom end are holding off. And so JetBlue has tried to sort of turn the corner around and try to sort of focus on those customers, on the higher end customers. But at the same time, the airline is struggling in terms of being able to cash in on actually that demand.
All right, Sid, thanks very much. Bloomberg Sid Phillip covers aviation for us on the news side. Later this hour, we're going to discuss American's earnings with TD Cap.
Hello, my name is DrPaulCottrell. We are live streaming on Rumble, on YouTube, and on my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Thank you for joining. I greatly appreciate it. Please help support the work that I do by sharing the links, asking your social media to follow me, And if you like the content that I do, please make sure you subscribe. I have lots of ways that you can watch my content. I have thousands of videos for free. All this stuff is for free. Please help support the work by making sure you subscribe. You can subscribe to YouTube, Brighteon, Bitchute, Rumble. I have Substack and TikTok, Patreon. I create content on my website under broadcast. You can listen to the audio podcast archive on my website. You can listen to my podcast also on Apple Podcast and Podomatic. You can watch this live stream on my website also, both versions, the larger screen without the telemetry and the screen that shows the telemetry of the market. We'll be going over the market throughout this broadcast. I'll tell you how to trade the news. It's really simple. But I'm also going to tell you how to improve your health. So if you like the content, please help by making sure you subscribe. And you can be a paid member to certain platforms like Patreon, the Substack channel. And you can donate on my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com, through Stripe, PayPal, or Buy Me a Coffee. Thank you for joining. I greatly appreciate it. I apologize for all that at the very beginning, but I want to get it out there. Please help support the work that I do. All right, with that, let's listen into Bloomberg for a little bit, and then we're going to switch over to a clip by CNN about this new strategy that Trump is doing with dealing with the mobs in Minnesota.
I was able to listen to the earnings call before I joined you all. They spent a decent chunk of time in their prepared remarks talking about all of those capital expenditures and all of the different states in which they are making investments. And I think that was very deliberate. If you remember, just a few weeks ago, President Trump specifically called out RTX as being, one of the defense contractors that the Pentagon is having trouble with in terms of its goal of ramping up output and sort of limiting shareholder returns. Now, I do think that these CEOs are sort of trying to walk a line of, being supportive of the administration's goals, and certainly they would like to see this, increased defense spending that the president has been calling for, while also being cognizant of the fact that it's not exactly clear how the president would go about imposing these regulations that he wants to see on company buybacks or dividends or executive pay. It's not clear what the mechanism would be to enforce that, or even what the mechanism would be to decide, what companies would be subject to those restrictions. And so I think there's a lot of question marks there. I think most CEOs probably feel pretty confident about their ability to keep doing, sort of having control over their share buybacks, but inevitably we're going to see a period of increased capital expenditures. And I think the question for investors is sort of what that looks like down the road, because when you step up your investments, that is not going to be as robust for your cash flow. And is that something that investors are comfortable with? Is that a good trade-off for them ultimately? And I think we're going to see a lot of questions about that in this earnings season.
Brooke, this has been so excellent. Thank you for breaking those down for us. That's Bloomberg's Brooke Sutherland. Some more earnings this morning. United Health forecasts a decline in 2026 revenue, its first annual drop in over 30 years. Its peers, though, are also falling this morning sharply after the U.S. government proposed holding payments to private Medicare plans flat next year. Bloomberg's Ike Swetlitz covers the sector and joins us now. The expectations were as high as a 6% bump in payouts. How did we get this so wrong?
So the Trump administration was expected to be, pretty friendly to Medicare Advantage, these private Medicare plans. The president's been under more pressure to address the affordability of healthcare for Americans, and we're seeing something different than folks expected.
So these shares, a lot of them have already taken a massive hit, Ike, and I guess investors were buying the dip to some extent, hoping that they could recover. Does this mean that's off?
The projections that United put out for next year, are also, I think, a big part of what's going on. As you said, seeing declining revenue coming in the future for the first time in a long time.
All right, Ike, thanks very much. Ike Swetlitz there talking to us about healthcare companies, which we will continue to follow and show you, taking big 10 and 20% drops, a number of...
Okay, we're going to pivot over to CNN's coverage of White House shows first signs of retreat after Minnesota killing. But before we do that, please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Make sure you use discount 5. It's all caps, discount 5. You get $5 off any order. All right, I want you to save money. These are products that I take every day to get healthy, slow down the aging process, and boost up the immune system. Super important. Structural nano silver toothpaste. This will help to neutralize, improve your oral cavity, freshen your breath, whiten your teeth, and with good oral hygiene, you're going to improve your cardiovascular health and your valvular health. A lot of people don't realize that poor oral hygiene will lead to poor vascular health. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Get the structural nano silver toothpaste. This is really important to take, especially during the winter season. And since we are in a weather storm in the United States, ice and snowstorm, it's going to be cold for several days. You're going to notice in your community, because of people having drainage and running noses, that you're going to start seeing people sick. They're going to be coughing and all this stuff. So it's really important to be proactive. Get the structural nano silver toothpaste to help to neutralize. That will help to improve your oral cavity. And get some of the other products that are super important, especially for this season and also for the allergy season. Get the structural nano silver drops and lozenges. You can get it in honey, in cherry flavor, honey and lemon, and blueberry. All right? Get a few of these for your household. The moment you start feeling that throat irritation or you're starting to get that runny nose, take it right away. Right? You want to neutralize because you don't want it to get into your lower respiratory system. Because that drainage, if it gets into the lower respiratory system, it's going to fester. Another thing that I have that will help this season, the Orange Splash lozenges have vitamin C, and the Manuka honey lozenges. Get a few bags for your household. Be prepared. It's really important to mitigate the problem right away. All right? So please go to my store and get that. And what's really important, if you're not feeling well or someone around you is not feeling well because of what's going on, get the silver gel. You can get it in the tube form or in the quick dispenser form. Put it on your hands, around your mouth, around your eyes, around your ears, around your nose. Lightly coat your nostrils. They'll also help to reduce that drainage when you're that runny nose. And it'll help you to sleep at night. A lot of people have problems breathing when they have stuffed up nose or there's drainage. So lightly coat the nostrils. They'll stay active for 5.5 hours. Very important to do. It's dual purpose. If you have a cut, an abrasion, or a minor burn, put it on that lesion. It'll help to heal it. It'll speed up the healing process. And you can use this as a daily topical to improve your skin health. So please go to my store, get the tube form or the quick dispenser, silver gel, be prepared. Very high quality and a lot better than Purell because Purell evaporates in 30 seconds because it's alcohol based. This stays active for 5.5 hours.
Rules, commands, MCP servers, subagents, modes, hooks, tools. There's a lot of stuff, and I don't think it needs to be this complex.
The Trump administration is changing who's in charge of the ongoing immigration crackdown. So is this a sign that the president is backing down? Today, Border Patrol Commander-at-Large Greg Bovino, he's seen here in this archive video throwing a gas canister at protesters last week. He's going to be leaving town. He's expected to take some of the 3,000 federal agents in the city along with him. The White House says Border Czar Tom Homan will take over the operation. For protesters on the ground, Bovino's exit is only a first step.
Good riddance. Couldn't have came sooner. And, but I mean, that doesn't mean everything stops, right? We can't take back what happened before, but we're still living in trauma from Renee and countless other people, right? But now we have this, that he came to our community and caused all this damage. It doesn't just go away because he leaves, and then who comes next and what happens next?
Joining me now in the group chat, Alex Thompson, CNN political analyst and national political reporter.
First of all, Good and Pretty impeded law enforcement. And a chaotic event happened, it got out of control, and unfortunately they were killed. But they shouldn't have impeded law enforcement. Now let's go back to why were they impeding law enforcement? They said that ICE agents and patrol agents were in their community and they wanted them out. Why were the ICE agents in those communities? They were rounding up illegals. So anyone that is going against the federal government is, in this regard, is basically saying they're for the illegals and not for rule of law. They'll say they're our citizens and they've been here for a long time and they're contributing to the community, and that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if they were here for 100 years. If they're here illegally, it doesn't matter if they're a billionaire, been here for 100 years, and they've been paying taxes. It doesn't matter. They're here illegally. So they need to get out. It's that simple. That's the root cause of the problem.
CEOs Audrey Falberg, National Review politics reporter, and Chuck Rocha, Democratic strategist and former senior advisor to the Bernie Sanders presidential campaigns. Alex, can I start with you? Because we got some signals from the White House. The president said he had a conversation with Governor Walz, I believe, that there's some dialogue there. But what do you think made the administration finally rethink how it was talking about the death of Alex Preddy and the ICE tactics overall?
Well, because for the first time in probably at least a decade, the politics of immigration are no longer on Trump's side. He always felt that this was the strongest issue, and every poll showed that was the case. With the increase, and this is not just about Alex Preddy, this is about increasingly over the course of the last year, voters have increasingly soured on the way that Trump has
We have
done
some
immigration
polling about this. The New York Times CNN poll, how ICE is handling its job. The number I always look at, independents, 70% disapprove.
Why doesn't CNN focus on the problems that the law enforcement has with the protesters? You don't hear that. Why is that? Because they only want to push a one-sided narrative. The government is against the people. No, the government's against illegals. And the people, many of them, are protecting the illegals. So how many law enforcement have been injured because of because of unruly mobs? They're going to ramp this up for this year, going into, because this is an election year, going into the midterm election, trying to demonize the Republican Party. Now, from a political optics point of view, I'm concerned because of these conflicts that are taking place, that the Republican Party may lose the midterm election in the House. Big problem. But the bottom line is this: independent of the politics, you have people in the United States that's protecting illegals. They should be out of the country. They shouldn't be here. There's no reason for it. And then people say, well, this was a country of immigrants and blah, 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 blah. Most of the immigrants that came over from Europe, most of them, came over legally, not illegally.
And this was January 12th, so this was even before this second shooting.
And they know that, and they sense it. And so Trump is now, frankly, you also have a looming government shutdown that will happen, or at least partial government shutdown that could happen as soon as this weekend, unless they can pass some of the DHS bills. And you need Democratic votes to do that. So the Trump administration is now trying to do all these things via executive actions to try to placate some Democrats. But Democrats so far have said they're not going to go along with it.
Now, I had seen the Wall Street Journal editorial board. You've seen other people sort of come out and say, hey, I think this is backfiring. Is the president hearing it? But the thing that stuck out to me was Chris Medell. He's a former candidate for Minnesota governor. I say former because he has just decided to drop out from the race. And to give people some context, this is the guy who apparently was a lawyer representing the ICE agent who shot Renee Good. So think about that. Very high profile, and he thought he was going to then run for office. Instead, he released this statement on Monday.
I support the beginning of Operation Metro Surge, the idea of getting rid of the worst of the worst, and they did some of that. But it has gone so far beyond that goal that it just got to a point where I just literally cannot support that. I can't look my daughters in the eye and say, yeah, I'm doing the right thing by continuing this campaign, by being a member of this effort.
There's political ramifications.
Looking for tax help? Now there are TurboTax experts right in your neighborhood. They get to know your unique situation and get you.
There's political ramifications all across the board here, but there's also real-life ramifications. The reason what you're seeing from the White House is because you can say a lot about Donald Trump, and I disagree with a lot of things with Republicans and what they do, but he is politically astute, and he understands when poll numbers start sinking around an issue that's very direct. And this is, to Alex's point, if you looked at those independent numbers prior to the election, they were upside down when you asked them if they should be deporting criminals or people that were doing bad things. 70% of independents would have bid for that. But to Alex's point, it's the way that they implemented that. We're not talking about the border being closed. We're not talking about actually bad people that have been deported. We're talking about what we're seeing in the street with American citizens dying, and that's his problem.
But I think this is also putting into stark relief of the very real and long existing tensions within the administration about how this deportation strategy is taking place. So we have people like Noam Corey Lewandowski, Stephen Miller, who want deportations up as much as possible for their own sake. And we have people like Tom Homan, who is seen by Republicans as more of the adult in the room. You know, he's controversial among Democrats, of course.
We heard folks at Fox repeatedly saying, you know who you should send in? Tom Homan. Right. And pretty shortly after Tom Homan was going in.
Proof that the president definitely watches a lot of Fox News.
Yeah.
But he is, you know, a proponent of more of this worst first kind of, you know, focusing on illegal and criminal aliens, illegal aliens with a criminal background. But I think, you know, another thing, there's a tragic, you know, fatal shooting in and of itself. And
illegal aliens broke the law. They should be out of the country. It's that simple. I don't understand. They try. It's so simple to do. If you impede law enforcement from them doing their job in rounding up illegals, then you are breaking the law too. I mean, and the Democrats want the illegals because what they want is amnesty, and eventually they're going to vote Democrat. They want their kids, even though they're illegal, in the school systems because that's how the schools get money. The schools get money not because the kid is an American citizen. It's based on pupil head. No, that's it.
Administration's response to it. And Noam and Stephen Miller accusing Preddy of domestic terrorism was obviously not the right course.
We saw, like this last weekend, it was the Stephen Miller, Kristi Noem response
to
this, because that is how they responded to every controversy over the last year. And what's so striking is that this is the administration overruling in some ways Kristi Noem and Stephen Miller, which they have not done so
and
far.
I heard that there was a meeting with Noem and Trump at the White House, but not Miller.
I understand. I'm not sure. I'm sure he is somewhat involved. I know that those two were in the meeting.
President Trump says he and Minnesota Governor Tim Walz are, quote, on the same wavelength after a call on Monday. They spoke for the first time since federal immigration agents shot and killed 2 U.S. citizens in Minneapolis. Walz says he told Trump he needs to reduce the number of federal agents in his state, and he said he felt a definite change in tone.
We've laid out the case that we do the right thing. We don't want criminals here, but we also recognize that someone coming here to find a better life should be treated with dignity.
No. People can come here legally for a better life. If they need asylum because of some problem, you know, some war-torn area of the world, we have a mechanism for that. But when you have people coming here illegally, and let's say they're law-abiding after, they're still here illegally and they need to get out. This sugarcoating crap from Democratic Party, they need this because they need the amnesty to have a higher population in their states because people are leaving their states because it's a shithole. And if they leave the state, they lose power in Congress because it's based on population. The number of seats in the House is based on population. If the state starts to lose population, they lose the number of seats, and those seats, available seats, go to a growing population state. It's that simple. And New York has a big problem, and that's the reason why we're a sanctuary state. So he's sugarcoating it. People can come into the United States for a better life, but they have to do it legally. You can't have it unfettered, illegal access. And that's the problem. That's the problem. Got a bunch of ultra liberals sugarcoating a problem and not dealing with it. Illegal people should not be here, period. Well, we're a nation of immigrants. Most immigrants that came to the United States came to America and to the colonies and to the United States of America. Most of them came here legally, not illegally. We had a very laxed immigration policy where people could come in. But then when we started tightening it down, we were able to not have so much disruption in terms of the economy, in terms of housing, in terms of jobs availability. Now the United States government isn't all lily white, but the bottom line is this. We need to start calling off illegal immigration for what it is. It's illegal, period. And I say, well, they came here for a better life. They came here illegally, period. Because if you allow them, the illegals, to come in unfettered, then you are going to change the cultural dynamic. It will no longer be America. It will be the last. It'll be some other culture, whatever culture that's dominating in the illegal immigration flow. These people don't want to assimilate, especially if they move in mass. If you bring them in a titrated manner, they have a higher probability of assimilating, which is good for the country. Waltz is wrong. He's sugarcoating the problem. Illegal immigrants need to get out of the country, either voluntarily or forcefully. Now, when you have a population that's fighting against law enforcement doing their job, then you got a problem. And this is what's happening in Minnesota. We're just going to get out the worst of the worst. No, all of them need to get out.
Because of the color of their skin and the atrocities we're seeing. And I look,
it's not about the color of their skin. It has nothing to do with the color of their skin. They could be European that came here illegally. They're here illegally. They need to get out. It has nothing to do with the color of the skin or ethnicity. Nothing. Zero. They're here illegally. They need to get out. Government needs to round them up. If you have a population that's impeding them, guess what? Don't be surprised that people get killed.
Group chat is back. I want to talk about this tonal shift for both of them. First, I think for the longest time I have heard this argument over the last couple of days, especially from conservative and right-wing voices that say basically there was a far-left organization that kind of put Preddy in harm's way and turned him into a martyr, that this is all part of a strategy.
It is a strategy.
Can I come to you?
It's a strategy to impede law enforcement.
Is that starting to fall apart under public scrutiny?
I think it is. And I think the important thing to remember here is when a tragic situation like this happens, our government officials are supposed to tone down the temperature, say this is a tragedy, and we're going to investigate the matter. That's not really what we saw from people like Noam and Miller, who again, accused him of being a domestic terrorist. I think if he had withdrawn his weapon, he did have a concealed carry permit. If he had withdrawn his weapon and tried to shoot somebody, that would have been a different situation. But that wasn't the case here. He was filming law enforcement.
Breaking news: United Health sinks 16% at open. Humana falls 17%. CVS drops 11% because of this flat funding for Medicare, I think it is.
cooperation.
And they sort of stepped on a rate going after his gun rights. It felt like you had some voices saying, like, the criminal intent is having a gun, and then your own party is then not going to love that.
The Pro Second Amendment Party was now saying that, well, just by having a gun around law enforcement, you are therefore a threat. They also completely misrepresented what happened. And if we had not had cell phone video from lots of different angles, they like the government's word would have been perhaps the last word. So by them misrepresenting it, and then we still haven't even seen the body cam footage from many of the officers too, which could actually make this a bigger crisis for the administration.
In a statement, Governor Tim Walz's office, they said the president also agreed to look into reducing the number of federal agents in Minnesota and working with the state in more coordinated fashion on immigration enforcement and regarding violent criminals. There are some people who are going to see that statement and say, look, if Tim Walz had cooperated in the first place, maybe none of this would happen.
I don't think any amount of cooperation would have stopped this administration or the Republicans for trying to get the vision what they want, which is them trying to be tough and quote unquote deporting bad criminals. And absolutely any bad criminal who does something bad should be deported. But this is not what they did. And let's be clear that there's real consequences to what
I don't like this tiered philosophy. If it's a bad criminal, and they're illegal, then we'll go after them. But if they're a good illegal working at the diner, then we're not going to go after them. What? They're here illegally, period. Are we going to have a land of laws or not? This is the beginnings of the fall of the republic. Plato stated in his many works, you have to beware of the masses. You have to beware of them, because what they will do is they will destroy the country. Because if you have a pure democracy, you don't have constitutional rights. Because in a pure democracy, they say whatever the majority wants is what it is. If the majority wants to change the calendar, then the calendar is changed. If the majority wants unfettered access to the country, then you start changing the culture of the country. If the majority of the masses wants to take away your home and give it to someone else, you have no recourse, because that's what the majority wants. This is the reason why our founding fathers said a constitutional republic is far better than a democracy, because it is based on a rule of law and grounded on the Enlightenment. The Enlightenment didn't exist during the Greeks. It didn't exist during the Roman Empire or the Republic. Our constitutional republic bedrock is the Enlightenment. And the Enlightenment shined a light to the world saying a pure democracy does not work, because they can take away your life, liberty, and your pursuit of happiness, or your property rights. And we're seeing it play out right now. Plato told us thousands of years ago what would happen.
I was on the phone all weekend. We were all snowed in. Lots of group chats going on in my actual group chats with Latino leaders around the country. There's folks traumatized. This left-wing stuff is not about left-wing stuff. This is about folks that are out there that are Democrats or progressives that are just fighting for regular folks and U.S. citizens that are getting killed.
Fighting for regular folks. CNN, ask deeper questions like, who are they fighting for? Illegal immigrants? Why the hell are you fighting for illegal immigrants? Why aren't you out there protesting, for elderly, for seniors to have better care? Or what about our veterans having better opportunities and getting them off the streets and helping them? Why not that? No, they will galvanize in the middle of the winter to protect illegal aliens. But they've never done that for their elderly, for their citizens that are retired, or the citizens that fought for this country. No. But they have tons of energy, tons of vigor to support illegal aliens. What about what was going on in the world during 2020 when you had a government that was out of control making stuff they shouldn't be making in laboratories? We all know about what happened, all right? We all lived through it. Where was the protest there? Everyone was hiding under their bed. But everyone can go outside now in Minnesota and support illegal aliens. So when people like this are in your circle and you're talking to them, drill it down. Who are you supporting? Why? Why are you supporting illegal aliens? Why? They're here illegally, period. What part of that don't you get? Well, they deserve to be here because we're all immigrants. They could have come here legally. Get out and do it the right way. Do you think it's okay for people to come to the United States the right way, the legal way, and have other people cut in line and do it the wrong way? You think that's right?
A group of people on the ground there that aren't trying to fight their government. They're just wanting to live and not be attacked by their government.
Does this mean they're in group chats because they're like, how can we be more politically active? Because a lot of people looked to Latino voters and said, look, you are the reason that Trump is in office.
Right. And a lot of that this weekend was about how do we take what power we have, like with Latino senators, Latino electeds.
A lot of the Latinos that voted for Trump basically said they didn't want the illegals in this country. They thought it was wrong for unfettered immigration policy.
Talking about the trauma that's going on the ground right now with folks that are just trying to abide by the law.
I have one more thing. Just sorry, I have to play this. It's the Oklahoma governor, Kevin.
So people are just trying to abide by the law while we're doing mob runs on ICE. What about the reason why everything is happening? What about the rule of law with the illegals? Some Yahoo wearing a cowboy hat is going to tell you on CNN. I can't take it anymore. I'm going to have a stroke.
He has publicly questioned the direction of this, and this is a very succinct statement that's sort of saying the loud part out loud. Here he is with Dan Bash.
But now Americans are asking themselves, what is the end game? What is the solution? And, you know, we believe in federalism and state.
The end game is get all the illegals out. What's the solution? Have ICE do their job and make sure that the mobs aren't impeding on their operations. It's kind of simple.
ICE, and nobody likes feds coming into their state. And so what's the goal right now? Is it to deport every single non-U.S. citizen?
Yes.
I don't think that's what Americans
It's here
want.
illegally? No.
Oklahoma.
Deport every single illegal alien. Yes, that is what many people want. It should have never happened. Biden opened up the border, said, you know, America's a smorgasbord. Come on in. It's a buffet. It's a all-you-can-eat buffet. And every Tom, Dick, and Harry decided to come to the United States. And now we got this problem. And then you have the Democrats saying that trying to clean it up, you can't do that. Ridiculous. You got to push back. You got to push back on these people. And you have this individual that is a Republican, all right, siding with the illegals because he's worried that the Republican Party and maybe even himself, his own seat. Right, well, he's a governor. He's concerned that the Republican Party is going to lose in the midterm election. It's very possible. But guess what? I'd rather have the Republican Party lose in the midterm election and do the right thing. The right thing is to get the illegals out of this country.
I mean, this it is extraordinary what you are seeing in terms of the rhetoric on both sides here. For the first time in many years, Democrats actually want to talk about immigration, and they actually feel that they have the political advantage by talking about it. That has not
They want amnesty. That's
perhaps
what they
since
want.
2015, 2016, in a way that most of the party does. And the fact that you have a Republican of Oklahoma saying, actually, the policy is not to deport every person that's here illegally.
That has a surprise to me.
I mean, but I think that shows because, and this is what people have always been saying, is that could never be the policy because you would have inevitably some of these images.
You should tell Stephen Miller. He's the one who said that they want to take away the rights of folks who are going through the processes right now.
Or birthright citizenship.
That's the birthright citizenship.
But I want to acknowledge all of the sort of conservative publications that were waving their arms in the air and saying, hey, this isn't working. Like, you went to make an example of Minnesota and you ended up making an example of yourself.
And losing the narrative.
In HR, you need some.
Trump needs to be very aggressive with this. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the structural nanosilver soaps. This will help to improve your skin, neutralize, very high quality. You can get it in peppermint, lemongrass, and also in charcoal tea tree. Very high quality soaps. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Also, because we're in the winter season, it's really important to take the cleanse, the max 35 or max 14. Take a teaspoon a day, swish it in your mouth, gargle, about 20 seconds, and swallow. What this will do is improve the health of your oral cavity and your oral pharynx, maintain your mucosal barrier, help with the health of your epithelial cells, boost up the immune system. If you're not feeling well or someone around you is not feeling well, take a tablespoon or two a day and then go back to your maintenance dose when everything's all clear. But it's really important to take the cleanse, max 35 or max 14 on my store. All right? Take it every day. I've been doing this for more than 5 years, every day. Now, what will happen is you're boosting up your immune system, but you're also neutralizing and improving your oral cavity. And so you're also improving your cardiovascular health. Super important. Please go to my store, get the cleanse, max 35 or max 14. And since we're in the winter season, vitamin D3 is super important. Why? Because it helps to get cells to go into apoptosis if they're infected. It will help your cardiovascular health. And if you taking calcium, either drinking milk or taking a calcium supplement and taking vitamin D3 and doing some resistance training, you're going to build denser bone. Really important. So please go to my store, get the vitamin D3, especially for the winter season. Use discount 5 and you get $5 off any order. All right, let's listen in to Fox's take on this issue. All right, so we listened to CNN. Let's listen to Fox because we're fair and balanced.
Here we go again. Everyone wants to know, so here it is.
Melania, rated PG, exclusively in theaters January 30th.
And amid the ongoing clashes in the state.
And Borders Czar Tom Homan now preparing to meet with Mayor Fry today as well after being deployed by President Trump.
Matt Finn is live in Minneapolis for the details. Matt, we're coming together.
Hi, Ainsley. Yeah, the Trump administration is making some major strategic changes here in Minnesota. Tom Homan is now going to be the main point of contact on the ground and will report directly to the president. Border Patrol Commander Gregory Bavino had been acting as a lead here, even recently hosting daily press conferences, but Bavino is now returning to be Sector Chief in El Centro, California, and other Border Patrol agents are leaving Minnesota as well. Tom Homan will be calling the shots. Fox has previously reported that Homan operates differently than Bavino, whose aggressive tactics are considered more aligned with DHS Secretary Kristi Noem and top White House advisor Stephen Miller. It was also announced that Noem is set to testify before the House Judiciary Committee on March 3rd. Now, yesterday, the president said he had constructive calls with Governor Walz and Mayor Fry. Writing afterwards, Governor Tim Walz called me with a request to work together with respect to Minnesota. It was a very good call, and we actually seem to be on a similar wavelength. I told Governor Walz I would have Tom Homan call him and that what we are looking for are any and all criminals that they have in their possession. White House Press Secretary Caroline Levitt said Homan was on a plane here to Minnesota yesterday. The president says Homan will meet with Mayor Fry today. And DHS tells Fox it is reviewing body camera video from officers involved in the shooting death of Alex Preddy on Saturday. Preddy was seen using a cell phone video to take video and was getting near immigration agents. DHS is also investigating the possibility that the gun Preddy had on him, which video appears to show an officer removing, may have accidentally fired after Preddy was on the ground. And last night, agitators continued their campaign of targeting hotels where they think immigration agents are staying and making as much noise as possible to prevent agents from getting rest. Agitators gathered outside a hotel in Maple Grove where they think Bovino was staying. A video shows officers taking people into custody. We're working to firm up the number of arrests. Now, DHS claims that threats against ICE officers has now gone up more than 8,000%. Back to you guys in New York.
Matt, is that new? I mean, remember on Sunday night, it didn't seem like cops were doing anything. And now it looks like they were wrestling some guys that wouldn't leave to the ground. Does that show a new stance when it comes to what locals are willing to do for the federal agents?
Well, what's interesting is that was in Maple Grove, which is a suburb. They released a statement saying we don't tolerate that type of violence here. Okay. It's outside of the city of Minneapolis where we are. So two different perhaps policies there. Yeah.
All right, maybe suburbs have a different approach. Thanks, Matt. Appreciate it.
So we've been watching all of this. Thank you, Matt. We've been watching all this unrest for weeks now. And on both sides, people are saying, okay, something has to be done. The president saw that. He's changing leadership on his side in Minnesota. And then he is extending the olive branch, calls the governor, calls the local mayor of Minneapolis, Mayor Fry, has productive conversations. Everyone involved has said that. Tim Walz said, I had a productive call with President Trump earlier today. And he said, I told him, could we roll the prompter? Thank you so much. I told him we need impartial investigations of the Minneapolis shootings involving federal agents and that we need to reduce the number of federal agents in Minnesota. And then Mayor Fry said, I spoke with President Trump this afternoon and appreciated the conversation. I expressed how much Minneapolis has benefited from our immigrant communities and was clear that my main ask is that Operation Metro Surge needs to end.
This is the problem right there. This is from the mayor. I expressed how much Minneapolis has benefited from our immigrant communities and was clear that my main ask is that the Operation Metro Surge needs to end. Well, wait a minute. Why don't you follow the law, Mayor? You have illegals. Illegals are illegal. They broke the law. They need to get out. Why aren't you following the federal law? This is the point I'm making right here. They sugarcoat it. They take away that they're here illegally and they're just an immigrant. No. They're here illegally. That's the problem right there.
And federal law enforcement on real criminal investigations, but we will not participate in unconstitutional arrests of our neighbors.
Well,
so we're agreeing to work together. Tom Lewin's going to meet with both of them today.
But number one, Metro Surge is going to end when the president's going to end. It's nice of him to go assert himself. He has to add those additional sentences because that's what he does. I mean, he says this has got to end. They don't work. Local is not working with federal officials on these cases. They're not opening up their jails. That's one thing that Tom Lewin will ask for today. So we need access to these guys, so we have to wait outside the jail when you release them and then hunt them down again. That's what makes it bad. Also, if we can communicate with you when maybe you can secure the perimeter when we have to move on dangerous illegal immigrant criminals, that would certainly benefit. And I'm not sure it violates your sanctuary city policies, but I think that like every good leader, if you have a plan that's not effective and you see it getting escalating out of control, you have to come up with another plan. And that plan is Tom Homan to come in there and just say, all right, I don't know what the...
Hopefully they de-escalate it, but let's just take this to its ultimate end. If the mayor and the governor get what they want, all right, you can do a mind experiment here. Let's just say they're basically saying it's okay to be an illegal alien. So we could have a bunch of illegal aliens coming from, let's say, the Middle East, and they decide to push out other ethnic groups out of Minneapolis, create a mosque, and have Sharia and not pay attention to the government and have their own little Sharia community. Do you think that's right? Do you think that's okay? Do you think that's okay to water down and destroy the amalgamation of the melting pot of America? Because that's what unfettered access to the country will produce. A caliphate.
That's just been with you, Mayor and Governor. It doesn't matter. This is what I'm hoping to do. What are you hoping to do? So he listens, he gets some marching orders, then he goes and meets with agents. But what I understand, Phil, there's absolutely no leadership from Kristi Noem and Greg Bavino. They feel totally out of touch. So hopefully Tom Homan will address those leadership gaps, and then we put the people in place that will be effective in implementing this plan to get illegal immigrants, the worst of the worst, out of major cities. It's been effective in New Orleans, been effective in Memphis, been effective in Washington, D.C., and I think it's even been effective in Chicago.
Well, yeah, and look, this is a positive step forward because President Trump realizes that, two things can be true at the same time. The country wholeheartedly wants violent, criminal, illegal aliens out of this country, while at the same time, they're not comfortable with what we're seeing in Minneapolis. And President Trump's already getting results because he's changed Fry and Waltz to open their door to consider actually cooperating, which is the whole reason why ICE went in the first place. ICE didn't have to go in there, but for the fact that these cities that are sanctuary jurisdictions were letting these criminal aliens loose. Caroline Levitt talked a little bit about it yesterday, saying that there's no need for ICE, CBP, Border Patrol to be in these places if you just have cooperation. Now, with those statements you just read, Ainsley, I think that's showing that President Trump has actually opened up a door.
Look,
it's changed the game.
I agree. It's a step in the right direction so that we can end this unrest. Tom Homan's going to say, we're getting these guys. If they're bad guys, if they're pedophiles, if they, whatever they've done, if they're bad guys and they're here illegally, we're going to get them. So do you want to help us or not? If you help us, we'll help you. You won't have these riots in your city. Your city won't be on, top story of every news. Everything will get back to normal in Minneapolis. So let's work together.
Yeah, also, they want to focus on the fraud, which is massive and growing, $9 billion, and the cash register is still going on.
I'm Steve Ducey.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.
All right. I want to listen into General Keane talking about Iran. Iran is a major problem. Now, the markets are opened up. The S&P 500 is trading at 6,977. The VIX is at 15, almost 16. So we have low risk. We're also noticing that the Japanese yen is trading now at 153.25. Now, the backstory with the Japanese yen, the BOJ is intervening in the markets to try to strengthen the currency. The rumor is that the Japanese central bank is working with the Federal Reserve to actually strengthen the Japanese yen and weaken the dollar. Now, what has been happening for quite a while is that the Japanese yen has been weakening and the dollar has been strengthening in relative terms. Now, it was trading at about 159, almost 160, and the BOJ intervened. It's now trading at 153. If we start seeing that trading at 140 again, there's some stress in the international market. Right now, there's not stress in the international market. It's Japan trying to strengthen their currency. All right? Now, with the VIX being at about 16, 15 handle, things are stable, equities are going to drift upward. There's still a major resistance level at 7,000. My forecast for the S&P 500 for year end of this year, 2026, is 7,800. The low end, maybe 7,400, right? But right now, major resistance level at 7,000. But every time that Trump brings up tariffs, the market wants to go down. The rumor is, based on what Trump has stated, that there's going to be 100% tariff on Canada, and there's going to be increased tariffs for South Korea. This came out last night. We're still waiting on what the Supreme Court is going to rule on and what legality the current tariff regime is. You know, what legality there is for this tariff regime. But there are other mechanisms for Trump to use tariffs. So this whole tariff war is not going to end just because of the Supreme Court's ruling. That's going to cause headwinds for the equity market, some unknown. This is part of the reason why I think that the double-digit gains that we had last year probably will not manifest this year, because we're still going to have some tariff war. In addition, there's going to be major fluctuations of the energy market. Why? Because of Iran. Now, some experts are saying because of President Xi's purging of generals, that it's weakening his prowess to attack Taiwan. This might be the reason why the United States felt a little bit more at ease by moving the Lincoln strike group into the Middle East to do a hit on Iran, because you have to remember it was coming from Asia. And we don't have enough strike groups. So we're kind of spread a little bit thin, moving material and capability in the Middle East and having capability in Venezuela. So at least in the short term, we may actually see a little bit of a weakening of the PLA because of this general purging that's taking place. We'll see what happens. But energy markets are going to fluctuate. So in terms of energy, natural gas is now trading at 5.7, 5.8 right now, okay? It was trading almost at 7 yesterday. And I've been saying, once this cold spell comes through the country and the de-icing takes place and everyone's shoveling the snow out of the way and temperatures will start to warm up, we're going to see a major drop in the futures for natural gas. All right? If you pay attention to what I've been saying, you've been making some money here. Now, oil, that can fluctuate because of what happens with Iran. I suspect that it will pop when we hit Iran. Will we hit them this week? Maybe. Probably not. Probably going to wait a couple more weeks before we hit Iran. So right now it's trading at $61.23 a barrel. That trading range has been approximately 56 to about 61. So just with the trading range, independent of Iran, we're at the high point of that range. And normally you'd want to short the futures market in this case. The problem comes in is that there's probably going to be a spike in oil when we hit Iran. So this thing might drift back up to about 63. If there's no hit in Iran, then it'll start to drift back down to 58, 59 because there's a lot of oil. But if it's drifting up to 63 and then we hit, we probably might see a $69 a barrel of oil. But it won't last for very long, and it'll last depending on the success of the operation and duration of the operation. So pay attention to the oil market. There's a lot of oil out there. All right, with that said, let's listen in to General Keenan.
Sending 40 Iranians on an ICE deportation flight home this past Sunday. The American Immigration Council says this is the third such flight since September. Now, the USS Lincoln Carrier Strike Group entering Central Command waters in the Indian Ocean, as President Trump maintains Iran wants to make a deal. Now, the commander-in-chief telling Axios in a brand new interview, quote, "We've got a big armada next to Iran, bigger than Venezuela. They want to make a deal. I know so. They called on numerous occasions. They want to talk." Now, the president reportedly coming close to ordering a strike on Iranian targets earlier this month over the killing of tens of thousands of protesters.
Breaking news. January consumer confidence at 84.5%. Estimate was 91. So January consumer confidence is lower than estimate.
that have been out pushing back against the regime. Some advisors reportedly though cautioned him at any attempt at a regime change, saying that can be a risky proposition. I want to bring in Fox News senior strategic analyst and Institute for the Study of War Chairman General Jack Keane. General, the situation with Iran seems to be coming to a head. How do you assess things right now?
Yeah, well, certainly.
Hand off your taxes to an expert in your neighborhood. Now, your TurboTax expert can file for you, so you don't have to miss a moment. You've got better things to do than taxes. Have a local TurboTax expert file for you.
Parents of children who play Roblox. If your child was sexually exploited, abused, or pressured to share explicit content by some...
Yeah, well, certainly I agree with that assessment. We've been waiting some days now to get these additional assets into the region, mostly maritime assets, the carrier strike group and the assorted ships that come with it. They have air defense systems, certainly, that can help with any retaliation attack by Iran to protect our bases and also to protect Israel. And then they also have, obviously, aircraft, but we moved a lot of aircraft into the region to various air bases, as well as air defense assets. But they also have offensive cruise missiles that can be used as well. I think what this is really about is, one, is holding the regime accountable, as you indicated, for the thousands that have been killed, and also the tens of thousands that have been in prison. And the president said he would do just that. And I think it's also about trying to cut off the head of the snake here. In other words, the regime is the snake, and we're trying to get the leaders out of there so some kind of transition can take place. A military strike in of itself won't do that unless you put boots on the ground here, and no one's thinking about doing that. But it certainly helps to put them on the path to doing that. And listen, just the threat of this happening has to be weakening the resolve of the leaders around the Ayatollah. I mean, Iran, Cheryl, is at the worst situation it's ever been since they came into power in 1980. And they are weak politically, economically, and militarily, and really on the cusp of not being even able to recover any of this because of the economic situation in such poor shape militarily. You can imagine the pressure that the leaders feel, much as Maduro's. The leaders around Maduro were feeling, is this worth sticking with this leader? And if our fate is what it appears to be, that our fate is a very dangerous situation in terms of the other leaders surviving.
Well, there was a
pressure
defection
on the regime.
Yeah, well,
and I'm assuming we're talking to some of those leaders, like we were speaking to the leaders in Venezuela prior to the operation that we conducted there.
No, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, sir, but there was a defection in Davos by an Iranian official. And then what we're seeing now is that there seems to be some reporting out there that, to your point, I agree with you that, look, the Ayatollah is back in a bunker again. And the way to do this is to target the Iranian, the IRGC, but then also to find those allies, if you will, those underneath the Ayatollah that are willing to work with the United States. And I agree with you about no boots on the ground. That seems to be, the concern from this side of the Atlantic. Do you think that's possible?
Well, we don't know, but I just know that the pressure is significant, and certainly the threat of an attack, and people know when President Trump says he's going to do something, he does it. So I think that, one, the attack itself, executed, could put them on a pathway to a change, and two, if something else can occur as a result of the pressure that's on them, that certainly would be a welcome event anyway. We're trying to get rid of the head of the snake here and eventually try to work with a new government that would likely, what we're seeing in Venezuela, be a transition government, somebody you can actually talk to. I don't think you can talk to the Ayatollah and the hardliners around him. They are stuck in what they're trying to achieve. They're not changing anything. Recovering the ballistic missile program, they want to recover their nuclear program. They want to continue to arm their proxies. They want to go on as if nothing happened. in the last 2 years, which is a complete absurdity for the Iranian people. And certainly they are really the victims here. We have to keep focused on what is best for the Iranian people.
Yeah. Well, and does that change come from them? I can't see with these tens of thousands of people murdered by the regime that they're just going to all of a sudden stop with trying to take back their country from that regime. General, there's so much news I want to get to with you. There's more trilateral talks between Russia, Ukraine, and American officials this week in Abu Dhabi. Kyiv and Moscow are saying that things have been constructive. A Kremlin spokesperson saying there's still serious work ahead despite these positive talks. But it's territory. These positive talks, but it's territory disputes. That seems to be the biggest obstacle, sir. Ukrainian President Zelensky says the U.S. full security guarantee document is ready to be signed. Do you think that we are close, finally, to ending this war?
Well, here's what I do think. I mean, I do think the United States and President Zelensky and his team and the Europeans have come pretty close to agreements, and certainly the security guarantees are a manifestation of that. And for our audience to understand, the security guarantees is something that protects Ukraine from a future attack. It deters Russia from that attack by having forces on the land, air power, and also sea power out there to deter them. And agreeing what that composition is going to be and where it will be is a very good thing. And that has taken weeks to come to that agreement. So that's very positive. But here's the problem. Putin has never made a single concession. I'm talking about Putin. His emissaries talk concession, but I'm talking about Putin himself. Not one time has he made a single concession. He's refused to cease fire temporarily, and he's refused to make any concession of consequence himself on territory. And he's also said he's not going to tolerate any kind of foreign troops on Ukrainian soil. So I think the security guarantees, when they're put in front of Putin, is likely an obstacle and impediment. I'm skeptical still whether we can achieve something, not because of the lack of hard work by the American delegation, which I applaud what they've done, and the Ukrainians and the Europeans. They have all rolled their sleeves up and got something done here. It's Mr. Putin who's the obstacle here, and I'm skeptical that he's going to make a deal.
Well, General, certainly there's so much happening around the world. We always really appreciate your perspective on all of this right now. It's a very difficult time for the nation.
We're going to go to Sanctuary Cities by News Nation. Please go to my store and get the complete multivitamin. This is easy to digest. It has the multivitamins that you need for proper enzymatic activity. By taking this multivitamin, you're setting the foundation to slow down the aging process and to have a better metabolism. And stack it with the probiotics that I offer. I offer a powdered version and a veggie cap version. Take it every day, and with a good probiotic, you're improving your gut biome, you're absorbing your nutrients better, you're reducing leaky gut syndrome, you're improving your immune system, bringing down inflammation, improving your skin health, and also your brain function. A lot of people don't realize that your brain function is correlated to your gut health. With proper gut health, you're going to be able to sleep better, get rid of that brain fog, be able to concentrate, and you're consolidating memory. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, get the probiotics, also stack it with the multivitamin. And it's a great foundation to start slowing down the aging process and get healthy. Good gut health starts at the gut. And I have dual purpose deodorants made from essential oils from the Himalayas. They're for males or females. You can get it in citrus and peppermint, lavender, and tea tree. Now, these deodorants use daily, but it will also help to detoxify your body. And when you detoxify your body, you're helping your immune system and your endocrine system. So please go to my store and get the high quality deodorants. They're made from essential oils from the Himalayas.
BillO'Reilly.com. Bill, it is good to see you. Trump has clearly changed his worldview over the weekend? How would you characterize it? Backing down, strategic pause, pivot? What's happening?
The madness. Donald Trump knows this is no good for anybody, and he will. He's going to make a deal with Walls. I don't know what the deal will be. But the most important part of this for News Nation viewers isn't about the individual politicians. It's about the misreporting of this story in the totality. There are two different stories here. The first story is the violence against the two people who are dead. There should be an FBI task force in Minneapolis right now, right this moment. I don't know if there is one because Kash Patel has not held a press conference. Where is the FBI director? Where? You can't have Homeland Security investigate Homeland Security. You can't. Why do we have the FBI? You have so many potential crimes in the city of Minneapolis and the state of Minnesota. The only bureau who could do it would be the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Where are they? Where is Kash Patel? All right? You can debate videotape all day long. You can say whatever you want to say, but there has to be an overriding authority in this state.
He's
Where
right.
is it?
He's right.
Did you see, Leland, and because you've been studying it like I have, one Minneapolis police officer protecting ICE against the demonstrators? Did you see one?
No, but that's not the FBI's job to investigate
no. The answer is no. The answer is no. You didn't see one because there wasn't one there. And this is a public safety issue with dead people. No local or state cops. None. By order of the governor and the mayor. That is insane.
Now, that may be insane, Bill, but you want Kash Patel to investigate the governor because he didn't order the police to protect
You bet
ICE?
I do.
That's the solution?
You bet
Okay.
I, not protecting ICE. If the FBI comes in and finds that the agents, the federal agents, one ICE, one Border Patrol, all right, were derelict in their duties or use malice, I want those people indicted. Clear? Are we clear? But on the same token, you have got two elected officials that could be charged with rebellion and insurrection under the U.S. Code 2383. This is a rebellion. That is why the people are dead. Nobody brings a gun, a loaded gun, nobody, CNN, to a confrontation with federal agents who are under siege. No one does that. That man did. Because, in my opinion, he was so crazed by the situation, so agitated, as I am right now, that he had lost all judgment. Now, listen to me. The authorities, governor, mayor, feds, have to control that. The controlling bureau is the FBI, not Homeland Security. They're doing what they're ordered to do. Find and detain people who should not be here.
Okay. So you write
one more point.
You write in your newsletter, okay.
One more point.
You write in your newsletter
when you
the same
allow
approach is far beyond laws.
Look,
You write the same approach on this anarchy. Who is the modern John C. Calhoun about Walls, a despicable South Carolina senator who actually wanted the Civil War to happen? Do you think Walls wants the Civil War to happen and therefore should be arrested as though he was a Southern governor or something in the early or late 1850s?
I think there is evidence that should be examined, and you might be able to charge Walls with insurrection under the. Want me to read it to you? I got it right here.
Would that be good for America?
I don't care. Look, anarchy is the worst thing that can happen. The worst. Right now, in this present moment, de-escalation is the best thing that can happen. So Holman meeting with Fry has my 100% endorsement. Walls calling Trump, vice versa, 100%. But that doesn't excuse what has happened and is happening, which is a rebellion against the United States law passed by Congress, by a state under the governance of Walls and a city where Fry runs. Look, if you continue, and I say you in a general sense, to allow states and cities to not enforce federal law, you don't have a country. It goes. Okay? Everybody should understand.
So then why is Trump
now, here's the
backing
second
down?
part of the story. He's not backing down. He's trying to defuse. Why would you say he was backing down? Do you want a CNN contract? He's not backing down. He's diffusing the way he should. Now, here's the most important part of this whole thing. Unreported. Okay? There is a man in Shanghai, China, an American citizen. His name is Neville Roy Singham. He works with the Beijing government. He is funneling millions of dollars into the United States of America through 501s like Party for Socialism and Liberation, Democratic Socialists of America, Minnesota Immigration Rights Action Committee. There he is, okay? Connecticut-born, 71 years old, billionaire tech guy. He is funneling money here to these radical organizations who are then agitating professional people, communists mostly, because Singham's a communist, all right, to go in and foster rebellion. You heard that story reported? That is absolutely true. The man has been investigated by the FBI in the past, this Singham character, okay? This isn't some organic thing. This is a foreign power, Beijing, using this American citizen who lives openly in Shanghai in luxury, knowing that this man is funneling tens of millions, probably more, into this country to try to destroy the government. What the deuce is that? Where are you, New York Times? All right? That's the second part of the story. There's a local federal story, and there's the international story. And I've had it. You don't like what I'm saying? Blank you, because I'm telling you the truth. And this has got to stop and be exposed across the board. No more sanctuary states and cities. No more of this insurrection. It stops. And federal agents take the gun in a holster unless you can. Not I might. Got it, everybody?
Okay. We actually had somebody on. We've been following the Neville Roy Singham story. January 6th, this is the Free Press reporter who's been working on it. Take a listen.
Neville Roy Singham, he's a tech millionaire. He's also a Marxist, and he has very close ties to part of the propaganda machine of the Chinese Communist Party. And from 2017 to 2022, we were able to trace at least $20 million that was funneled into the People's Forum.
So why don't you think the FBI, right? Why don't you think the FBI has indicted him or any of the people who are being paid, who are actually in the United States in these protests or in this resistance movement?
I don't know. I don't know where Kash Patel is. He should have a press conference tomorrow. I don't know. All I know is I'm a journalist and I'm telling you the truth. I am sick and tired of false reporting based on ideology, of pie in the sky garbage, of people like Whoopi Goldberg accusing agents of murder. How dare you? How dare you? What about due process, Miss Goldberg? And Disney knows that's going to happen. Knows it and puts it on. I'm fed up with it.
Okay. Where does this go from here? Betting odds right now, who will be the first to leave Trump's cabinet? Kristi Noem, 40%, Pam Bondi, 19%. Kash Patel isn't in the cabinet, so he's not there. Where does this story go, Bill?
It's up to President Trump to reorganize this whole immigration crackdown. That the executive branch has to reorganize it. And the president knows that. Okay? And I know he'll reorganize it. But at this point, it would be cheap shot for me, who isn't in the meetings, doesn't know the dynamic, okay, to say, well, Noam should go or this one should go. Americans can hold an opinion on it. But I'm a fact-based guy. I don't have enough information there. And I don't have enough information to convict Walls of Fry either. But there's certainly grounds for them to be investigated on the Insurrection Act. Both of them. And there are grounds to investigate the ICE and Border Patrol agents who pull the trigger. Those investigations should be transparent. Patel should be holding weekly press conferences, and it should begin this week.
Okay. Well, we'll see if there's a press conference with Kash Patel. You make a great point. He has been so far in the background, to say the least. Bill O'Reilly, thank you very much.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our News Nation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.
Another person that seems to be incognito is Tulsi Gabbard. Now, if there is a infiltration of the CCP and trying to create disruption in our country using tech billionaires, don't you think that Tulsi Gabbard should be involved too? So it's not just Kash Patel. So, like, what's happening here? Is this the deep state, dragging their feet? Pam Bondi seems to be doing that on many items on her desk. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the magnesium and zinc. This will help to boost up your immune system. It's dual purpose. It'll also help to improve your brain function. Magnesium is super important for brain function and the efficacy of vitamin D3. A lot of people don't know this, that if you take magnesium, your vitamin D3 supplementation will be more effective. So please go to my store, get the magnesium and zinc, boost up that immune system, and improve your brain function. And since we're talking about brain function, I have a very high quality neurostack called Clarity Factor. Clarity Factor will help to get rid of that brain fog, allow you to concentrate on tasks, and over time, produce more dendritic connections between neurons. And that way you will be thinking faster and you will have better memory. Super important to take every day. Drink it with filtered water. Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and stack it with the magnesium and zinc. It's a very powerful neurostack right here. And it'll help to boost up your immune system because of the magnesium and zinc. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. Use discount 5, all caps, discount and the number 5. On any order, you save $5. Get the great supplements that I offer, boost up that immune system, slow down the aging process. By improving your brain function, you're slowing down the aging process for your brain. So that's really important. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. The link is in the description. All right. Now I want to play this clip from NTD about the CCP is extremely unstable right now, per Chinese expert.
To discuss is Sean Lin, Executive Director at the Concilium Institute and member of the Committee of Present Danger China. He's also a retired U.S. military or Army officer. So Sean, thank you so much for joining us today. And I just wanted to ask you, the purge of 2 top generals has intensified speculation that leader Xi Jinping is confronting powerful factions long embedded in the CCP. How are you reading the situation?
Well, thank you for inviting me. So first thing I want to emphasize is actually, Zhang Yuxia is not a close ally of Xi Jinping. I mean, in the past, definitely Zhang Yuxia played a critical role in supporting Xi Jinping to secure his third term in 20th People's assembly. But in the last couple of years, Zhang Yuxia has been a crucial member to urge limited power for Xi Jinping. Even there was so much discussion last year regarding Zhang Yuxia collaborating with party at the elite to constrain Xi Jinping's power and even potential military coup. So I think right now, even though many Western media talk about Zhang Yuxia is Xi Jinping's close ally, but I don't believe so. And actually, into the 2026 now, Xi Jinping see Zhang Yuxia as the greatest threat. That's why I think he can take this huge risk to remove Zhang Yuxia as well as Liu Zhengli, remove the top two generals in the Chinese Central Military Commission. And so now in the Central Military Commission, only Xi Jinping as well as Zhang Shengming is left. So basically, what he has done is hollow out the whole People Liberation Army's commanding system, the leadership mechanism. So this is actually put People Liberation Army in great danger in the power vacuum. So I think this is a big power struggle inside the Chinese military top leadership as well in the Chinese Communist Party Central Politburo. So that's why I think this is a huge critical moment. Many people believe it's like in the history during the Cultural Revolution when the second hand of Mao Zedong, Lin Biao, escaped in China. Of course, he died, and so this is another critical moment for the Chinese Communist Party.
Okay, so Sean, can you talk to us about the specific method that is used against these generals? So the generals are under investigation for which was stated as serious violations of discipline and law. Is this typical when it comes to top party members when they're ousted?
These excuses on the surface are very, very typical for removing high-ranking party officials or military generals, and it happens for removing some top leadership in the military system. So basically, they have to find these excuses and also maybe adding some corruption cases so that it appears to be legitimate for the Xi Jinping to remove these top generals, right? That's why Xi Jinping now even organized a special investigation unit to went into Shenyang military district, even tracking back more than 10 years about Zhang Yuxia's history before he was promoted to the CMC, Chinese Military Commission, Central Military Commission. So this is basically has to justify these power surge, power purge. And so to find excuses that to justify, to legitimize these removal of these top two generals, because Xi Jinping knows very well that Zhang Yuxia and Liu Zhengli have very deep military support for a long time.
Okay, Sean, can you also talk to us about the timing, the specific timing here of these actions? Why didn't Xi Jinping do this earlier or later? Why now?
Yeah, it's a very good question. I mean, I think one of the factors outside is because in 2026 we see the capture of Maduro's as well as the power vulnerabilities in Iran. So the Central Military Commission as well as Xi Jinping and the Central Politburo, they all worry about the power stability inside the Communist Party, inside the military, and they really worry someone can collaborate with the United States and leak very, very important information. Xi Jinping worried that he could be the second Maduro. Right? So intensify internal stability is one of the top priority in Xi Jinping's control. So he understands that Zhang Yuxia has worked with the party at the elite to take out his power, and so he feels greatly threatened. And this year, he's I think, into an extreme paranoid. So he wanted to take action first. But there are rumors talking about even Zhang Yuxia has organized a potential coup, but the information was leaked before he take execution. So this could be Xi Jinping's survival strategy, that he had to take out these two generals so that he can still maintain his power.
Now, Sean, I'm wondering if you can also talk to us about the dynamics between powerful groups within the CCP, such as, the military establishment. We also know the so-called princeling elite, and there's the retired party leaders. Can you just speak to how does the dynamic work between these party elders? My apologies. Well, the dynamics between these three, and what is the tension of these groups?
Yeah, so last year, right, the party elites, as well as many people believe it was under the influence of Zhang Yuxiang, they set up a party at the elite consultative group, which is basically aimed to take part of the power out of Xi Jinping's hand. And so the CCP's power control, of course, really rely on the military. So the Central Military Commission is one of the key structure that can support CCP's regular operation, regular control. And so in this way, so basically military control is the foundation for any CCP party leadership. And then other party leadership, even though they are retired, but they still have significant influence. But a lot of times they're put into consultative status. But now, since in the past 1.5 years, Xi Jinping's control is weaker, so the party elites become more important. So what Xi Jinping is worried a lot is the senior military officer working with the party elites. And so, Zhang Yuxiang himself is also a party priestling, right? Because his father was Zhang Zhongxun, one of the revolutionary general. And so, Zhang Yuxiang also represent the party priestling groups. And Xi Jinping already take down so many party priestling in the past, like Liu Yazhou, also a very respected PLA general and a priestling. So Xi Jinping knows he has enemies in all three factors: the party priestling, the other party elites, as well in the military, right? So basically, he's facing all three factors against Xi Jinping's solo control of the party's power. That's why he has to take extreme action right now, regardless whether this will threaten the whole party's power structure.
Okay, speaking of which, Sean, just one last question here. How would you characterize the overall stability of the CCP? Is it stable? Is it extremely not stable, or somewhere in between? What is your analysis?
I believe it's extremely unstable right now, because if you take out all the top generals, and Xi Jinping has no background in military operation, military control, and nobody in the military will feel safe, and many people feel there will be another major wave of purge for mid-ranking military generals, right? In this way, everybody in the militaries are scared, and many military generals want even more out to support the Xi Jinping's action to take down Zhang Yuxiang and Liu Zhenli. It has been several years. No general has made public statement to support Xi Jinping. This is a very big signal that the military is strongly against Xi Jinping's action to take down these top two generals. And then we didn't see any party elites, whether it's Wen Jiabao, or other senior members who actually stepped forward to support Xi Jinping's action. So I think this is suggesting Xi Jinping is in a very vulnerable situation, and this also cripples the whole military operation system, and all the exercise or any regular military operation can be in halt. So political study, political brainwashing, and will be enforced to make sure every military general to toe the party line now actually toe Xi Jinping's line. And so this has become a critical, vulnerable point for the PLA as well for the Chinese Communist Party.
Okay, very vulnerable point. Sean, thank you for your analysis today. Really enjoyed hearing it.
All right, we're going to go to the Hill talking about Homan. Please go to my store and get the new product that I have. It's called Super Strong Relief. This will help to relieve headaches, bruises, muscle pain, joint pain. Apply it to the skin, and within 30 seconds, 60 seconds or so, you will have no pain or less pain. All right? So please go to my store and get the Super Strong Relief. I also have another great new product called collagen. This can be stacked with collagen to help rebuild your joint. Now, how collagen works is that you take 2 large droppers underneath your tongue and drink it with filtered water. Now, what it will do is help to use collagen 2 to remodel the joint, like your shoulder joints or your elbow or your hand joints, your knee joints, your hip, all right? Either because you're getting older or because of sports injury. But take this every day, and what it'll do is it'll use this collagen 2 to remodel the joint, and also ACAN to help cushion the joint. It will also bring down inflammation and reduce the erosion of the joint by blocking MMP3 and MMP13. In addition, pain will be reduced by blocking EP4. Collagen will also help to recruit and use glucosamine to help with remodeling the joint, and chondroitin to help with the cushioning of the joint. It's very powerful. Take it every day and help to remodel those joints. And again, you can stack this with the collagen. So please go to my store, get the collagen supplement and the super strong relief. Make sure you use discount 5, all caps, discount 5, and you get $5 off any order.
Good morning and welcome to Rising. We have another fantabulous show for you today. We're just having so much fun in all this Arctic weather. I truly am enjoying it.
I can't believe that you are downplaying it this way. You're kind of like joking about it.
It's nothing.
Serious.
It continues to be nothing.
So I'll tell you, I walked over around outside yesterday, and it was like sheets and blocks of ice. I had on big snow boots, and I was almost falling all over the place.
I went for a walk yesterday afternoon.
You had a nice stroll?
I had a lovely stroll. I skipped. I was.
You're lucky that your area was plowed. Some people are still suffering.
And 2.5 minutes today. We'll have it down to 90 seconds tomorrow. Nobody else is driving.
Coming up on Rising, TikTok users are saying that anti-ICE videos are being censored.
Plus, President Trump says the DOJ and Congress are, quote, looking at Representative Ilhan Omar.
And Washington Post reporters are publicly asking Jeff Bezos to not lay them off after reports of massive cuts to the outlet. First, Robbie, what's on your radar?
Well, you can probably guess what we're talking about here. Now, look, it's time to get serious. President Donald Trump is deploying Border Czar Tom Homan to Minnesota, probably to clean up the mess some other members of the administration, unfortunately, are making. Trump writes on Truth Social, I am sending Tom Homan to Minnesota tonight. He has not been involved in that area, but knows and likes many of the people there. Tom is tough, but fair, will report directly to me. Trump apparently listened when Brian Kilmeade made this very suggestion on Fox News, and it's a good one. Take a look.
What I would do is just bring Tom Homan in. Tom Homan's been marginalized. Go in there. Tom Homan's got credibility on the left. He's Barack Obama and Jay Johnson's main guy. He's got credibility, obviously, on the right. He met Donald Trump when Donald Trump started running for president and loved his philosophy on the border and seal the border. But where's he been? He should go in there, meet with the mayor and governor, and go in there and take charge. He knows this stuff backwards and forwards. There's no more experienced person. He's got the president's trust, but for some reason he's been marginalized in the Minneapolis operation.
Rules command.
Now, the background to all this is the behind.
Rules, commands, MCP servers, subagents, modes, hooks, tools. There's a lot of stuff, and I don't think it needs to be this complex.
Now, the background to all this is that behind the scenes, there's tremendous frustration among immigration enforcement officers and other Republican officials with the job that Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem is doing. Under her leadership, immigration enforcement has focused on areas where there's maximum non-compliance from local Democratic authorities. So you can argue these are necessary fights that the administration is picking, but Tom Homan prefers to actually accomplish the job of deporting large numbers of criminal illegal aliens. So maybe it's time to get his approach a shot. Noem, on the other hand, and others, keep making claims they can't back up about the motivations, for instance, of Alex Petty, who was killed during an altercation with Customs and Border Enforcement over the weekend. Noem and others make a false claim that just carrying a gun in a
is illegal during a protest or during an encounter with law enforcement, which obviously is not true. I can't emphasize that enough. Apparently, Trump is getting fatigued with all this unnecessary controversy. Conservative radio star Eric Erickson wrote on X that he had a, quote, late-night phone call with a senior White House official, tells me the president's not happy with how the Department of Homeland Security has handled the response to the incident. Now, I'm glad to hear it, because the fact of the matter is that this incident has not been handled well. As I explained yesterday in my radar, it's shameful that anyone in the administration will consider tossing out the Second Amendment, our cherished gun rights, in order to find an excuse not to scrutinize the actions of one specific law enforcement agent. Moreover, we need an impartial investigation. We can't trust the video evidence appears to show us, and apparently we can't trust what certain top officials are going to say. We need to be sober-minded and fair. There's a justification for the use of force against Preddy or against Renee Good. Okay, there's justification. I can't tell from the videos, but if you think you're absolutely certain, you're seeing what you want to see. Now, the administration has a short window to restore confidence in their operations, which they absolutely must do. The American people voted for Trump to carry out deportations of illegal immigrants. No way around it. Especially those who are gang members and fraudsters, and a net drain on their communities. They did not vote for and will not tolerate a permanent new police state where American citizens are killed with impunity, and then the administration turns around and lies about the circumstances and motivations of those killings. We demand better from the people running our country. They won't always get everything right, I understand that, but we need to have faith that they are trying, and that our liberties, our First and Second Amendment rights, will never be violated. If we lose those, then we really don't have a country anymore. So, Lindsay, a big shakeup is coming to the Minnesota operations. Tom Homan is in. Bovino is out. He is being sent into retirement, effectively.
He got cut off all access to his social media.
Yeah, because he keeps fighting with people on social media.
And he was childish when someone died. Yeah.
Right. And again, this is not the same thing as saying the death was a murder and that the person who did it is guilty. I do not know. We do not know the circumstances. They need to be investigated. They need to be looked at. The people in the administration should just say it is a tragedy that someone got killed, and we are evaluating the circumstances to determine if it was correct to use lethal force or not. We don't want anyone interfering with law enforcement, but of course you can carry a gun consistent with concealed carry rules, and of course you can protest, and we put the blame on Democrats who are not coordinating with us. That is the statement to make. But they keep getting over their skis and saying, oh, domestic terrorist, this is domestic terrorist. Everyone's a domestic terrorist now. We have broadened that concept in a manner that is no longer useful. So bring in Tom Homan, sort this out. Trump had a great call with Tim Walz, apparently. Finally. I was glad to see it, where it sounds like there was some compromising where, okay, they will assist, maybe they'll work with Tom Homan to assist in holding on to illegal immigrants who have other crimes. That is the middle ground I have called for all along. That's what I said Virginia had been doing under Glenn Youngkin, a great governor. I think El Spanberg got rid of that immediately. He was a moderate Dem. Fine, not good. But that is what Democrats should be doing, to work with Republicans to do immigration enforcement of the people we are most determined to get rid of. That's what Tom Homan wants to do, and I think it's the right approach. So I think this is all very good, and I'm hoping we see a de-escalation of some of these conflicts that are in it. It's not like, well, you just get to interrupt law enforcement and then that's it, they're going to pull back. That's not exactly the case, but we don't need to have we don't need to go out of our way to create chaotic moments where people are getting hurt.
Yeah, I think that what the last few days showed us is that the president and the administration is now looking for an off-ramp, the de-escalation that people were calling for, because they understand this has become and turned into a PR disaster. When we look at the way the response,
yes,
and also the responses, and if you just look at Caroline Levitt, who was speaking to reporters yesterday, and reporters kept asking and questioning in a variety of ways of, do you agree with the statements that Kristi Noem, Bovino, Stephen Miller are making?
And she said the president did not say she did.
Yeah, she's like, the president is waiting to see it. So the president is taking the measured approach that the only federal official that we really heard that from was Tom Homan the first time when Renee Good was killed. And to say that Tom Homan is somebody who we're looking at as moderate when his policies on immigration are very adamant and he defiantly wants migrants out of the country.
What's the secret to peak health? Going micro with Noom.
It's designed to minimize side effects and give me real weight loss? Yes, please.
I'm doing it. I'm going micro.
Heck yeah.
Now starting at just $99.
Migrants out of the country, illegal migrants, but he is somebody who's going to go in there and say, well, the job is the job. The job is not aggressive tactics against Americans. The job is not to see Americans die. The job is not to tell people they can't have their First or Second Amendment rights. His tactic is really to look at people who are already criminals or on their last leg of being here and really like give your last final order of deportation, and let's see why you extended your stay this long. And I think not all the people that are in between trying to figure out how to get permanent citizenship that are contributing to society, not the factory workers that are contributing to society. And so this is a good step. And also it's a great step that I've been saying over and over again, that the local leaders speak to the federal leaders. When we saw Vance go all the way to Minnesota and not speak to any local leaders, I thought that that was childish, no matter who makes the first step forward. So the fact that Waltz did reach out to the president, which again, kudos to him for making that phone call or asking for that phone call. Now they can have a dialogue that actually gets us a step forward, because talking on TV and berating one another wasn't getting us anywhere besides having two people killed within a certain amount of weeks between one another.
Yeah, there really is a split in approach that you were getting at, which I've emphasized before, between Stephen Miller and Tom Homan. And in fact, the reporting was that Stephen Miller had yelled at Tom Homan's people previously and had a fight with them, because he's like, why are we not, this is Stephen Miller's perspective, why are we not going to Home Depot parking lots and just mass arresting everyone? And what Tom Homan wanted to do was go into the states that are supportive of federal immigration authorities being there and do mass deportations of people who are already being held for other crimes. And then you would make a significant dent in the population, whereas Stephen Miller wants to do it on unwilling law enforcement personalities and do more of a, sweeping neighborhoods and that kind of thing.
And I think this is not the final solution, but this is a step in the right direction.
Well, don't say that.
No, I mean, instead of hearing the president say he wants to invoke the Insurrection Act, instead of hearing the governor say that he wants to call the National Guard on ICE, this is the first time that we're hearing, okay, bringing the temperature down, which is what both sides of the aisle have been calling for, and I think necessary. A letter from Pam Bondi causing some Democrats to issue warnings about this year's election. We'll be right back.
Food security is national security. Phosphate powers America's farmers, but global competitors like Russia and China threaten to...
Well, right now it looks like she will. We're hearing she had a meeting with President Trump yesterday for about 2 hours, but as far as we know, no immediate sign that she's going to lose her job. The question, though, is she's become such a lightning rod over the administration's tactics, and you have Democrats saying they want to investigate her, and then if Democrats tie her position to a bid to strip funding from DHS, and then there might be a government shutdown, you've got a president who's going to try to weigh all those factors. For the time being, though, it looks like she's safe.
Nick, to what point is President Trump maybe taking a bigger role here in what's happening in Minnesota? Just maybe the overall ICE strategy in general.
Well, you've seen a couple moves in the last 24 hours that do suggest he's really trying to climb down. So he's moving Gregory Bovino, who's been another real lightning rod in these in the sort of conflict between protesters and federal agents, out of Minneapolis. He's bringing in Tom Homan, whose approach has been much more focused on criminals. So rather than that sort of broad brush, really aggressive tactics where you've seen federal agents, deploying chemical spray and other things against protesters, and doing a much more sweeping roundup of people who are in the U.S. Illegally. So it does feel like he's moderating his position and stepping back a little bit. He also really wants to keep the focus on his agenda on affordability, for example. He's trying to bring that, take that term from the Democrats, and he's headed out to Iowa today to deliver that message. So he does not want this to continue to be such a big issue.
We welcome all of you across the nation. Good morning, good chilly morning. Nick Wadhams from London today, Bloomberg News national security reporter. Good morning on digital YouTube. Paul tells me people just listen on YouTube. I didn't know that.
They listen, they watch.
They tune in and they listen on the car. Thank you. Good morning on YouTube, Bloomberg Podcast. Nick, I want you to talk about, in the old days, there was the military and there was the police and there was a real sharp J. Edgar Hoover demarcation. Are we becoming a nation where we have 28 flavors of military?
You know, it really does feel that way in covering national security. I mean, things that would have been unthinkable even in President Trump's first term are now totally routine. So, for example, you never would have seen what we're now seeing in U.S. cities under Trump's first term. You had this hardline demarcation, specifically with National Guard troops. I mean, that was something that just was never done, a third rail that they never would have touched. And you had defense secretaries pushing back against the president and essentially saying, you know, pick me or this decision, because you can't have both. Now you have a Pentagon that is much more willing to see itself as an arm of President Trump's immigration push. You have the Department of Homeland Security willing to go much farther. So it's just a completely different situation than it was
With before. All you know, Nick, and with the resources of Bloomberg News, is ICE trained, particularly with firearms? I mean, I sound like my father, and I already like I mean, Nick Wadhams, are they trained with these guns and the ammunition they place within them?
Well, I think what you've really seen is a lot of concern around training for how they deal with people who might have guns or might be in a difficult situation, and how willing they are to use their own weapons. I mean, there have been several cases where you've seen mishandling of firearms by ICE agents, but what you've also seen is a willingness to escalate and a real sort of hair trigger response to protesters, and in a lot of these situations that have, you know, critics would argue have really made it much, much worse. So we do have, there has been a lot of reporting around the concerns around their training, but specifically on, you know, going into a situation where you would think their goal would be to de-escalate, but what you find is that essentially the ICE agents are escalating that, and that results in the kind of situations we've seen over the last several days.
Nick, do we have any more clarity in cities such as Minneapolis and maybe others as to the relationship between ICE agents and local law enforcement?
Well, there has been, you know, unlike in the past, what we've seen is a real sharp divide there, where local law enforcement in some ways is often taking the side of the protesters, or working much more closely with state officials. Minneapolis is a really interesting one, though, because in the last couple of days, you have seen this sort of de-escalation from both sides. The governor, former vice presidential candidate Tim Walz, talking to Trump on the phone, the mayor talking to Trump on the phone, and essentially looking to say, listen, we got to work together. We got to figure out how to de-escalate. Whether that works is another matter.
What about the domino effect the president's team alluded to? If he leaves Minneapolis, does that force him to leave other cities?
You know, that is really one of the things. I mean, you're exactly right. One of the big questions on his mind. I mean, president who has really staked a lot of his claim with his base on looking tough, and he does retain still a lot of support from his base of their actions in Minneapolis. I think what you'll see, though, is they leave, they look to de-escalate the situation, but he's not going to characterize it that way. They will be able to say in some ways that they've done what they set out to do in Minneapolis, and now they're going to be looking at other cities. But more broadly, I don't think you're going to see this campaign against irregular migrants in U.S. cities back down in any way.
My name is
course,
Ty. My proudest financial
senior
accomplishment
citizens
is
who were,
retiring by the time I got to 40. When the layoff did happen, it was a blessing. It really felt like I had been liberated. I planted the seed of how do I get to this point in my life on a permanent basis. I've tried a lot of financial products. Allfront actually did better just by creating an automated product that diversifies across different asset classes, letting the automation run and letting long-term trends play out. By the time I turned 40, I was able to stop working for money. It wasn't the material things that brought me happiness.
Why do we keep repeating the same mistakes when it comes to
levels higher?
Exactly. So we're not there yet. We were about 0.5% away, so we're close. For what it's worth, the Nasdaq that outperforms ahead of a lot of Mag 7 earnings. Matt.
Coming up tomorrow, Scott Cronert of Citi joins us, as well as Abby Joseph Cohen of the Columbia Business School, ahead of a Fed rate decision, plus the CEO of Logitech following the company's earnings report. This is Open Interest.
I truly believe we're in a once-in-a-generation build cycle in the energy industry. At Duke Energy, we're rebuilding that entire system, not over 80 years, but over a decade. We're investing $200 billion over the next decade to modernize the system and expand the capabilities for AI, advanced manufacturing, and to serve population growth. Our massive capital plan is estimated to have a $370 billion impact. Not only are we delivering power for our customers, we're also igniting the communities we serve.
We talk about, the revolutionary dynamic of what's happening around data center and AI and the spend, from a capital point of view as being incrementally gigantic, right? It's its own economy if we're really thinking and talking about it. The last time this really happened was probably the dot-com era, so a quarter of a century ago, but the substance was really lacking. And so now you're in this era where there's a ton of substance as it relates to what's being spent and also what's being built.
Join me each week on Wall Street Week for stories of capitalism from business, markets, economics, tech, and climate. More than what you need to know, it's what you need to think about.
Las escuelas públicas de la ciudad de Nueva York hablan su idioma. ¿Sabía que las familias de la ciudad de Nueva York hablan más de 180 idiomas? Todas las escuelas públicas de la ciudad de Nueva York proporcionan servicios de traducción para documentos y de interpretación para las reuniones. Para obtener más información y acceder a recursos o para dar su opinión sobre los servicios que ofrece su escuela, visite scholnyc.gov/HLLO o llame al 311.
And is that of concern to you?
Yes, it's of great concern to me that our civil discourse, our civic discourse, is not civil enough. Aristotle said that a democracy depends on an open debate where you respect the dignity of those with whom you disagree. He said democracies only live if they are sustained over a period of time by a thoughtful, rational discourse. A discourse in which you respect the dignity of those with whom you disagree.
Get your fixed income fix. Watch Bloomberg Real Yield around the world right here on Bloomberg. Context changes everything. Bloomberg brings you breaking news 24 hours a day. Powered by more than 3,000 journalists and analysts in more than 100 bureaus across the globe. Bloomberg Television. Context changes everything.
Earnings Palooza. All right, let's head over to Lisa Mateo first for our Bloomberg Business Flash.
You got it. We've got stocks. Right now, a mixed look on the screen. This says earnings season kicks into high gear. We have results from 4 Mag 7 heavyweights later this week. Today, we heard from UPS. It sees better than expected sales. The company continues its overhaul, cutting those less profitable package volume out of its network. It's the first time in a year that the carrier has provided full year sales guidance at shares. Right now, they're up about 3%. General Motors, it raised its profit outlook, approved $6 billion in buybacks and an increase in its quarterly dividend. Taking a look at GM, and they're up about 9%. Tesla opens its books tomorrow. Ahead of it, its shares right now down about 0.2%. And Boeing, their fourth quarter earnings, which featured a second straight quarter of positive cash flow, well, just wasn't enough to impress investors. Their shares, they were down. Now they're starting to come back up about 0.2%. To the markets we go. The Nasdaq leading the gains up 1%, 218 points. This S&P 500 up about 0.5%. The Dow taking a hit, down about 0.7%. We go over to commodities. I have to point out silver up more than 4%. We go to spot gold up about 1.5%. Brent crude up about 1.5%, $66 a barrel. WTI crude about $61 a barrel. The dollar hit the lowest level since 2022. The Bloomberg Dollar Spot Index weakening by about 0.5%. Taking a look at the Japanese yen, strengthening by 0.6%, 153.23 against the dollar. And also this Amazon, it's closing its Amazon Go, Amazon Fresh physical stores, with some locations converting into Whole Foods. That is your Business Bloomberg Business Flash. Scarlett and Paul.
All right, Lisa Mateo, thank you so much. We appreciate it. Scarlett and Paul Sweeney, we're live here in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio in New York City. We're streaming live on YouTube as well. Let's see what some stocks on the move today. We're joined by Bloomberg's Christine. Christine, what are you looking at today?
We're going to take a look at United Health, Paul. Ticker UNH. That is having a bad day. Those shares are down 19% now. But that is only set for the biggest drop in terms of the day's move. Since mid-April, it's only set for its lowest closing price since August. So that just tells you, even though it's a bad day for United Health, it's actually gotten much worse. But that is because we did get a forecast from the company, see a decline in 2026 revenue. That is their first annual contraction in more than 3 decades. And so quite a big deal, a historic moment for the company in not a very good way, unfortunately. And then also they've been hit by more policy risks, right? Because the U.S. is now proposing to keep payments to private Medicare plans flat next year. So it's a bit of a double whammy for United Health.
Right, just days like today, news like United Health just reminds me how much I absolutely don't know anything about healthcare finance, economics. Like who pays who? I have no idea.
But at this point, this is just a proposal. It's not even a done deal. And it's the fact that something can happen like this and blow everyone's expectations out the door, Let's move on to some defense names.
Yeah, let's take a look at Northrop Grumman this morning. We did get results from them as well. Ticker NOC. So just down a little bit today, down 0.3%. I mean, the results were quite mixed, and we did see adjusted EPS at 27.40 to 27.90 in terms of their forecast for the full year. The estimate is 28.96. So, the midpoint of that range, still meeting those expectations. They did have their fourth quarter income rising 17%, $1.27 million, which is above estimates. And then a lot of attention being paid as well to their order backlog, which is a good indication of future business. That reached $95.7 billion, which of course has been spurred by awards for the F-35 fighter jet and also Virginia-class submarines.
Northrop Grumman, the Grumman part, originally based on Long Island, but they made my favorite aircraft, the F-14 Tomcat. So
there you go. Yeah.
What else you got? One more?
Taking a look at RTX as well, staying with the defense theme here. So those are doing better. They're up 2% at the moment, and that's ticker RTX. And yeah, very interesting call. I mean, the top line of the results was a fourth quarter adjusted EPS at 155. That is above estimates, and sales rose across the company's primary aerospace and defense units as well. Quite a bit of interesting comments coming from the earnings call. They did say, the company saying that they will continue to pay dividends to investors even after they drew criticism from President Donald Trump, who said that the company specifically citing their sluggish weapons output and lavish shareholder returns. But looks like the CEO of RTX, Chris Kallio, backing that dividend plan, and we're seeing investors running them for it today.
Yeah, investors do like their dividends. All right, Christine Aquino, thank you so much. She is our managing editor for Bloomberg Markets Live blog. You can check her out and check out her contributions on the terminal. And of course, for more conversations like this, subscribe to our Stock Movers Reports. Listen for 5-minute audio reports on the biggest winners and losers in the stock market. Subscribe to Stock Movers on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere you listen. Earnings Palooza in full swing here. General Motors, the latest report as well. It expects profit to grow as much as $2 billion this year. And like RTX, plans to return more of that to shareholders with a higher dividend as well as buybacks. Earlier, GM's CEO Mary Barra joined Bloomberg's Matt Miller to discuss their earnings and their push on EVs. Remember those? Take a listen.
The whole industry, we were on a path that we were working to get to
40 to 50% EVs by 2030. So now that the regulatory environment has changed and the consumer incentives have gone, there is going to be slower EV adoption. We're still committed to EVs, and we've got a great portfolio that we're working on taking costs down. But in the meantime, we also have a great internal combustion engine platform. And you're right, full-size trucks are one of the strengths we have, as well as full-size SUVs, mid-size crossovers. So we really have a strong lineup across the board, and that is really what is fueling our business success.
I have had, as the host of Hot Pursuit, a Bloomberg podcast about cars, the opportunity to drive a lot of your EVs, from the Sierra EV to the Hummer EV to the Escalade IQ, and they're fantastic products. Are you not deterred that Americans aren't buying more of these vehicles? You know how capable they are. You know how useful they are in daily life. What needs to happen for more Americans to buy these EVs?
Well, I think the consumer is very rational when they're making a decision about what car to buy. Let's remember, it's one of the most important and expensive decisions that they make. And one of the things we have to continue to work on to drive EV adoption is a more robust charging infrastructure. And that still is continuing to happen. So every quarter, more and more chargers are available. I think as people in their individual communities see that they've got a robust charging network and believe if they have to go on a road trip, there's that as well, they're going to make that choice. And what we do see is once someone buys an EV, they see the technology, they see the driving experience, never having to go to the gas station, and they stick with EVs. So I think it will happen over time, and that's why during this period we've already got a great portfolio of EVs. We're going to continue to take costs down to get our EV portfolio profitable, and we're going to be well positioned as EV demand grows over the next handful of years.
What about the hybrids, Mary? I mean, GM was really a front runner, not only in EV technology, but in hybrid technology with the Chevy Volt. I remember when the Tahoe came out with a 6-liter gas engine and electric battery power. Will you start to sell more of the hybrid vehicles?
Well, we have always focused, as you said, we have great hybrid technology. We have great EV technology. We're one of the few OEMs that invested in a dedicated EV platform that allows us to have the portfolio we have. So we're focused on the end game, and we have affordable EVs. So I think that's where our primary focus is. We understand the technology. We have it in other regions. You'll see us with a handful of hybrids as we move forward. But right now, our focus is really on having the right internal combustion engine portfolio and the right EV portfolio moving forward. And I think we're demonstrating that that's a winning formula, because over the last 4 years, we've gained share each year.
All right, that was General Motors CEO Mari Barra, and of course, for more on the company's earnings and what she had to say, let's bring in our Steve Mann. He covers autos for us here at Bloomberg Intelligence. He's the Bloomberg Intelligence.
I personally think that Barra destroyed GM by focusing too much on the EV market. She was woke. She needs to get out. We need to, focus on durability, nice design, and less electronics.
It's 10, 15% EVs. So, they do have a big portfolio, but it was just at the beginning of rolling them out. They do still have one more major rollout coming out, which is the Chevy Bolt, a smaller vehicle, which the industry and GM thinks that that's where the market is going, a cheaper, more convenient EV.
GM stock up 9% today to a 52-week and an all-time high. So the street likes what they're hearing. Steve, it's almost to the point where the street rewards these companies if they not fully back away, but at least slow down the evolution to EVs and just focus on what's making money today. Is that kind of where the industry is today?
Yeah, exactly. Like Trump actually did the auto industry a major favor by relaxing the miles per gallon mandate. So basically, every vehicle in the big three's portfolio are currently meeting those mandates. And what it means is less penalties, right? And no need to buy EV credits going forward. Huge savings. And what that means is it could translate into a slower increase in car prices for consumers, especially for big trucks. Makes the big trucks a lot more attractive to sell for the big three. So they're going to sell as many as possible, given this opportunity. I know we talked about hybrid for GM. It's going to be a huge a sinkhole for them if they invest in that technology today. So let's not do that. Maintain whatever they can do with EVs and really push the ICE vehicles.
Maintain what they can with EVs so that, small 10 to 15% of their overall portfolio, forget about hybrids and just focus on the mammoth gas guzzling vehicles that Matt Miller likes driving. I know he talked about how he drove electric versions of that, but let's face it. What happens then if gas prices do turn up higher unexpectedly? And I know that the administration is doing all it can to prevent that from happening, but I'm looking at AAA gas prices and they bottomed at around $2.79 and have now made their way back up towards $2.90.
Yeah. I mean, historically, when gas prices go up, it does impact ICE sales. And, it may push some buyers into EVs, depending on how where the expansion of the EV charging network is at. But I think at the end of the day, if gas prices do go up, it actually benefits the Japanese companies like Toyota and Honda, where they have a full suite of hybrid vehicles that actually consumer love.
Yeah, I just leased the Honda CR-V hybrid. My son who drives in California all the time, where the gas is really expensive.
Yes, that's right. He probably wanted it. And how often does he have to fill up?
Not that often. I mean, just not that often. It's great. It's a great technology. Steve, let's just, while we got you here, what's the call these days on Tesla? As we talk about this EV business, but really for Tesla, we're talking about so much more.
Yeah, looking at GM as a backdrop, GM's earnings for 2026 is probably a little bit light. There's probably some more upside on the shift mix for more ICE. So what it means for Tesla, it's an uphill battle for them. I know the stock is trading, at an astronomical valuation at the moment. Investors are very focused on their robotaxi autonomous vehicle build out. People feel that they can actually outcompete the likes of Uber and Lyft. So sales will be weak in the fourth quarter for Tesla, but I believe the investors are actually looking over past that into what is the catalyst, or what is Elon Musk going to talk about in their next earnings calls on robotaxi.
Yeah, it's always about the Elon Musk narrative, his vision going forward of what this company is going to be. I wonder, Mary Barra talked about the charging infrastructure and the network and how we're not there in the United States. Tesla is offering the supercharger, and that's part of its business model, to be able to make that charger available to other automakers. How big a contributor is that to its revenue, to its profitability? When it's profitable?
Yeah, it's still a small amount. It is what they do is they want to expand that business. So they are talking to gas stations like Wawa out in Pennsylvania are actually buying superchargers, installing it into next to the gas pumps and next to the stations. So they are trying to expand it. In terms of charging, selling these supercharging business and the revenues from the charging, it's still really, really small. I would say around 10%, maybe less.
Hey, what do we know about how important are incentives here? I look at other countries around the world, and they've got these huge EV percentages of sales. China, the Nordic countries. How important are government incentives to get there?
It is very important. I think the Germans are actually putting back the incentives, and it has lifted EV sales in Europe, in Germany. But at the end of the day, you really want to build a sustainable growth environment for these cars. And Mary Barr is right. We actually published a very extensive report on EV charging, comparing charging network in the U.S. versus China, night and day, right? So, it's about convenience. It's about cost for the U.S. consumer. It's great to have, it's great for consumer to have some subsidy, help pay for the cars that they're buying. But I think long term, it really needs the consumer to really buy into the product.
Yeah, and to have chargers available nearby. That's why it works in California and less so here on the East Coast. Steve Mann, thank you so much. He is our global autos and industrials analyst here at Bloomberg Intelligence. And Paul, whenever I rent a car, Hertz will try to push an EV on me, and I go in the other direction because I don't want to spend my last hour as a car renter trying to find a charging station.
Yep, exactly right. I think a lot of people have the opinion, hey, when it gets to there are as many charging stations as there are gas stations today, then it comes off.
Right.
And we're way far away.
And when you charge, you have to sit there for like 20 minutes sometimes. Yeah. You're not like get in, get out, 5 minutes.
Yeah, no, thank you. But the hybrid's working well for my number 4 offspring. So there you go. Maybe that's the technology. S&P 500 up 35 points, the Dow off 350. We're going to have more coming up. This is Bloomberg at Home.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, Bloomberg Television, and the Bloomberg Business app. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
minute Bloomberg Business Flash brought to you by Golden Crest Metals. Inflation, tariffs, and volatility have some investors turning to gold for stability. To get a free gold and silver info guide and to learn how to add metals to your IRA or 401k tax and penalty free, go to goldencrestmetals.com/guide. That's goldencrestmetals.com/guide. Well, we still have tech shares leading the advance this morning, up more than 1% for the NASDAQ. A rally in memory chip makers. We look at Micron, their shares up more than 4.5%. That's on plans to expand its memory chip capacity. We mentioned tech. I just want to take a peek at Apple shares. They're up more than 2%. They're leading the Mag 7. So the NASDAQ up more than 1%. We have the S&P 500 rising 0.5%. The Dow down 0.6%. A big part of the Dow drop off due to healthcare. Shares of a number of major U.S. insurers falling. That's after the U.S. proposed holding payments to private Medicare plans flat next year. And that is a huge disappointment for investors. We look at CVS Health down 11%. We have Humana off about 19% and United Health falling about 18%. Speaking of United Health, it also forecasts a decline in 2026 revenue, the first annual contraction in more than 3 decades. To the yield space, the 2-year 3.57%. That's down 1 basis point. The yield on the 10-year 4.22%, and that's up about 1 basis point. To currencies, the Bloomberg Dollar Spot Index weakening by about 0.6%, with the Japanese yen strengthening by about 0.7% at 153.05 against the dollar. The euro strengthening 0.7% at 119.71 against the dollar. Bitcoin right now just above 88,000. Bitcoin actually down 25% since October. It's shed about 6% in the past 7 days. Now it's finally starting to see a lift. JetBlue having some trouble winning it over those higher paying customers. He reported wider loss than expected last quarter. Its shares are off about 5%. And American Airlines reported a miss on fourth quarter results. Its shares are little changed. That is your Bloomberg Business Flash. Scarlett and Paul.
Hi, Lisa and Taylor. Thank you so much. We appreciate that. Scarlett Fu and Paul Sweeney are live here in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio in New York City. We are digging out like a lot of other folks. We're also streaming on YouTube, so head over to youtube.com and search for us there. Let's go to our next guest right away. Kim Fars, founder and chief investment officer of Boca Capital Partners out of Pittsburgh. Kim, I see in your notes that you mentioned you are owners of UNH, United Healthcare. That stock's been certainly in the news today. The stock's down 19% today. As an owner of this thing, assuming you still own it, what's your call? What's your view of what's going on with this company?
Sure. Well, firstly, the reason why we have United Healthcare is because we run a sector-neutral strategy, meaning we have to have proportional exposure to all sectors in the S&P 500. And looking at insurers, health insurers, actually, United Health, yes, they've had issues, and the whole, government not going to reimburse or raise reimbursement rates next year is an issue. However, UNH has a lot of technology in its operations. So we believe that they are relatively well positioned to be able to weather lower reimbursement rates because they use technology effectively. They develop it in-house and use it. So that's really interesting to me, who came from a background in software. And it's not easy to own today, but it is what it is.
Oh, I appreciate that angle, because I know that you always focus on the tech angle, and this is, something that I think may be underpriced, underappreciated by a lot of investors. What about the rest of the sector? I don't know if you own any of the other names like Cigna, like CVS Health, like Humana, but are they in a similar position, or are they kind of, because of their lack of investment in tech, to the extent that UNH has made, are perhaps not as well positioned?
Right. Well, I looked at all the insurers. Oddly enough, my exit from software engineering, that last contract that I was on was at a large Blue Cross Blue Shield. So I kind of know how healthcare works from the inside. And looking at these other companies, I believe that the use of technology, effective technology, is about the only thing that can give them higher profitability and still do their job about, taking care of people. So in looking at them, I still think that United Health has the strongest tech stack, and that's why they were the pick for that insurance slot in our strategy.
Big tech earnings week, and just earnings in general this week. Kim, what are you focusing on?
Well, I'm focused on all of it, but today is, at the end of today, we're going to get news from Seagate. I think that's it, STX. And, the memory is hot. Who would have imagined, if we told you like a couple of years ago, makers of NAND and DRAM are going to be the hottest thing in the market. I laugh saying that because it's so nerdy, right? But it is a very hot item now because of AI and because of how the new chips demand this high speed memory bandwidth stuff. So looking at that, that's certainly important, but the Mag 7's important tomorrow, IBM's important tomorrow. There is a lot of tech coming at us, and we want to see that companies are getting revenues and they're still in the focus for their customers.
Makes a lot of sense. And I know that, it feels like the big tech names have already gotten their initial lift over the AI excitement, and now investors are much more discerning about them. When it comes to the memory space, is it still, everyone bidding up anyone in memory, or do you see that discernment taking place for the memory names as well?
Well, actually, it's gone the other way. In the beginning, Micron, was the one name to rule them all, to quote the Lord of the Rings. But it looks like anybody who's creating memory is really in the spotlight. And I think it will shake out. You'll always want to own the highest quality companies you can. I don't really love the companies that still make the spinning disks. And why is that? Even though in the shorter term, companies, especially AI, need a lot of storage space, but over the long haul, guess what? Having spinning disk systems, the old-fashioned kind of hard drives or the, disk-based systems requires more electricity than NAND, which is a static kind of memory, kind of like the memory sticks in your phone or your computer, if you remember those, or camera. So looking at that, we like Micron still probably better than everyone because they are concentrated in the areas that we think are going to be growth areas for the foreseeable future.
All right, Kim, we'll let you get back to all those earnings. Kim Forrest, founder and chief investment officer, Boca Capital.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the omega-3. This will help with your cardiovascular health, bring down inflammation, and help control your lipid profile. In addition, omega-3 will help to reduce the stickiness of your red blood cells to reduce overclotting. Super important. That's why I said during the crisis, you needed to take omega-3. Cardiovascular health is going to be super important going forward, especially if you're 40 years of age or older, because better cardiovascular health will also help with brain function. Olive leaf extract. Olive leaf extract is dual purpose. It's going to help to boost up your immune system and help with your cardiovascular system. It brings down inflammation and helps with your lipid profile. Detoxifying your body is super important. Do this every day. Take 3 small drops underneath your tongue with zeolite. Drink it with filtered water. This will bind to the heavy metals, toxins, and chemicals and allow you to urinate them out within 6 to 8 hours. Do this regularly, especially every day, and your immune system and your endocrine system will perform better. Also, guess what? Your metabolism will improve when you are detoxifying your body, and your brain function will improve. Take the zeolite every day, 3 small drops, drink it with filtered water. Another very important thing that you should do around your house is take a look at the cleaning supplies that you have and the paints and everything that's in your garage and basement. If you don't need them, get rid of them. If you do need them, put them in a double layered container. And that way you're reducing the degassing of these chemicals and preventing you from being exposed. So please clean your environment and detoxify. Make sure you drink filtered water and stay away from processed foods. All right, I want to go to Brett Barr. It is being interviewed by Brian Kilmeade about Kristi Noem being in trouble with this whole fiasco in Minneapolis.
First off, what about the change? We haven't seen much change outside Michael Waltz going to the UN. We have not seen much change with this White House. But now Kristi Noem, after a 2-hour meeting along with Corey Lewandowski and the president in the White House, is no longer in charge of Minneapolis. And I don't think any of these, I think more than likely any of these city operations. What do you think?
Good morning. I think it's a sign that while the White House is publicly saying that the president hasn't lost any trust in Secretary Noem, that she is potentially in trouble, and that he has confidence in Tom Homan, believes that he can kind of set the stage there in Minneapolis and Minnesota better, and that he will report directly to President Trump. I mean, he doesn't put that in the Truth Social post unless there is something amiss. And by all accounts, there is, a lot of infighting in DHS between Noem and her ally, obviously Cottrell, Rodney Scott, Border Patrol, and Tom Homan with Noem. So that bad blood is kind of playing out here in the midst of what I know the president probably realizes is something that they've got to clean up quickly.
Todd Lyons, too, was on the outs, and it looked like Rodney Scott was marginalized. Tom Homan's going to bring both those guys back in, and I think he's going to diminish the number of ICE and Border Patrol in the city. I'm very curious to see if the meetings with the mayor and governor will change the tone on both those, instead of continuing to say this is love and you have an obligation to shoot this and Frank references. I wonder if we're going to see a change in tone.
Well, I mean, just in the conversations that both sides reflected on yesterday between the president and Governor Walz and the president and the Minneapolis mayor, I think that, both are saying that they're de-escalating the rhetoric, and I think that, that's probably a positive sign. Not only that, but then you start getting local and state police involved and local and state authorities allowing ICE to do their job with the protection that really arguably should have been a couple weeks already.
Hey, listen, Kristi Noem and Tom Homan weren't talking. Tom Homan was not getting a call back for months. And that's a problem, especially if you're alienating Tom Homan. Do you understand that you couldn't have anybody who is more in sync with the president than Tom Homan? And you do that at your own peril. You should understand basic office politics better than that. So here's Senator Ted Cruz on the need for change. Cut 9.
What I think the administration could do better is the tone with which they're describing this. That immediately when an incident like this happens, they come out guns blazing, that we took out a violent terrorist, hooray. And the problem is, particularly for someone not paying attention, if you're being told this is a mom of 3 and there's no indication, she's not waving an ISIS flag or doesn't have a suicide vest around her.
Yeah.
Escalating the rhetoric doesn't help, and it actually loses credibility.
So that's not usual for the senator to take on the administration of their policies. And I think it's in wake of the change. It gives people freedom to act. I'm wondering, Brett, do you think this leads to a shutdown? What does your gut tell you? What do your sources say?
Well, Democrats are heading that way because they see that this is a really political, valuable moment for them. They've seen polls turn their way. They've seen independents shift dramatically against some of these ICE operations, and believe that starting this pot is a good thing. But as you talked about earlier, it's not really fruitful if that's what they're trying to do. If you're trying to deny ICE money, it is not this way, because they've been funded largely, almost completely, through 2029. So you take that money and you then affect TSA and somebody that can't get someplace because of airport backup, or FEMA and emergency funds in the wake of these snowstorms. I think that is potentially dangerous politically. But right now, Democrats are, sowing their oats. They feel like this is a valuable political moment.
So I'm looking at some of the polls, and the president's got reason to feel he's on the right side of this. 55%, when asked, are you for deporting all legal criminals? The New York Times poll, 55% yes. Marquette poll, 64% said yes. CBS, 57% said yes, and ABC, 56%. So it comes down to, if these polls, it's very rare to get polls over 50% like this. So let's say they're true, or they're trending true. It's all about the methods. And if Tom Homan offers the fresh start there, I think we could be on the right track, because Tom Homan said We got to go for the worst of the worst, and you put all the pressure on the people protecting illegal immigrants in sanctuary status, if that is indeed the case.
Yeah, I think it's about painting the picture. It's about the tactics they use. It's about how they do it. Obviously, you're going to have these professional agitators and other protesters that are designed to kind of stir the pot in each one of these operations. But if you have local and state authorities helping separate that, maybe have protest areas that are away from the operation, all kinds of things that you can do. Number two is that you're right. When you talk specifically about criminals and getting them off the street, the polls are exponential. Guess what else is exponential? When you say, for people who have been here illegally but have been paying taxes or have been part of the community before 2020, if you provide them some way, some pathway, or maybe you do the dreamers, all of this stuff, it's starting to be a 70, 30, 80, 20 issue. And I don't know if the president's going to get there, but I wouldn't be surprised if there's a long ball in the game before the midterms.
So, Brett, I'll tell you, the president has said on the air with us here that he is for finding a solution for people that have been there a couple of decades. Maybe it's a long-term work visa with the sponsorship. Maybe it's not rewarding with coming here legally with citizenship, but maybe it's getting them acclimated into the system where you can get insurance and you can get scale pay and things of that nature. No longer have to fear deportation. So that is something I hear you, and I think the president wants to do that. I think Stephen Miller, I think Kristi Noem, and who's ever telling Kristi Noem what to do, are the ones pushing against that. The zero-sum game, I don't think is where the American people are at. Thanks so much. Hey, Brett, look forward to you tonight. See special report tonight at 6 o'clock Eastern time. Thanks, Brett.
Want even more Fox News on YouTube? Become a Fox.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Myotrol. Myotrol will help with the gene expression to build muscle, do resistance training, and build that muscle. Myotrol has polyphenols, flavonoids, and lignans to help with the gene expression to build muscle and maintain muscle. Myotrol will also help the health of your mitochondria so you have the energy to maintain your muscles. This is really important to reduce atrophy. So please go to my store and get the Myotrol. If you are an athlete, you can benefit from Myotrol even if you're younger to help build that strength. Another great supplement that I have, Gladiator Barley, this is a month's supply that will help to build muscle, bring down inflammation, soak up free radicals, and detoxify your body. When you do that regularly, you're going to slow down the aging process, boost up your immune system and your endocrine system. In addition, by bringing down inflammation and soaking up free radicals, you're helping your cardiovascular health and brain function. So please go to my store and get the Gladiator Barley. If you are an athlete, you can also benefit from this. And a great stack to build up your strength as an athlete is to take the Gladiator Barley and the Myotrol, do that resistance training and build strength for your sport. But like I've been saying for a long time, you can benefit if you're older from sports medicine. And that is to take the benefits from sports medicine and apply it to slowing down the aging process. So if you're older and you do some resistance training, you don't have to be an Arnold Schwarzenegger. Take the Gladiator Barley. It's going to help you to build muscle, bring down inflammation. You'll recover quicker after those workouts. Bringing down inflammation will also help with the joint pain that a lot of people that are older have. So please go to my store, get the Gladiator Barley, stack it with the Myotrol for max benefit. And again, this can be used also for athletes. So please go to my store, use discount 5, you get $5 off. All right. Now, what I want to see is there's this is from Fox News, released 3 minutes ago. So let's listen in here.
Minute before the show starts, so I thought that's what was happening. So I froze, or I wasn't fully in tune with the show. Maybe you saw it, maybe you didn't. Who cares? All right, Minneapolis, there's so much going on right now. There's been so much going on for the past couple of weeks. The Trump administration has made some very major strategic changes here in Minnesota. Border czar Tom Homan is likely on the ground right now, if not on his way here. The White House press secretary said yesterday he was hopping on a plane yesterday. I've been in touch with the White House and with Mr. Homan. We just can't confirm his whereabouts right now.
Let's go to Fox News here. This was released 27 minutes ago.
And Governor Walz yesterday and posted about it. Fox News contributor Guy Benson joins us now. Guy, so much has changed in 24 hours. Tom Homan in, Pavino out to his original post, but they say not fired.
Lots of private assets.
Well, it seems like a demotion at the very least, and my guess is President Trump, and there were some sources whispering about this over the weekend, he was watching how everything went down in this terrible, deadly incident, the response, the statements that were made by high-ranking officials, and the backlash against the untruthfulness of some of those statements, or at least the debatable nature of what they were saying. And he said, enough of this. This is, among other things, a political and PR battle, and a way to lose it is to not have credibility with the public. And so he decided to send in Tom Homan, who's a very experienced guy. He understands the job through and through. He wants to take it very seriously and do it the right way. And I think that Trump going out of his way to note that Homan hadn't been involved in Minneapolis or Minnesota was sort of a blank slate moment to say, hey, this needs fresh eyes, fresh leadership. And by the way, he's reporting directly to me. That was a shakeup, and I think a needed one.
Right, and I think it's leadership too. I'm going to take action. Kristi Noem, focus on FEMA and other things. But Minneapolis, we're going to put some fresh eyes in there that have credibility on both sides. The other thing I think to point out too, Tom Homan's kind of iced out. You notice he wasn't on television for the last 2 to 3 weeks. His focus is going to be on the worst of the worst. And I sense that Pavino and company were just scooping up some people that I don't think the president was for. I mean, it was about 6 weeks ago when the president was talking about finding a way for people that have been here 20, 30 years or 15, 20 years and finding them a way of having maybe a long-term work visa with a sponsorship and that type of program. That didn't coalesce with what we were seeing.
Well, the promise was mass deportations that applied to anyone in the country illegally, but the focus that they really targeted in terms of their rhetoric and certainly many of their actions was the worst of the worst, people with criminal records. And by the way, in the first roughly year of this Trump administration, according to ICE data, about 70% of ICE arrests were of people with criminal histories in the U.S. So that's a very good batting average. I think the thing spun out of control in Minneapolis, largely due to the left, by the way, and these roving, rogue bands of agitators that are almost like these militias running around, stalking these officers, deliberately interfering in operations, which is a crime. I think these are criminal enterprises in many cases, not just so-called peaceful protests, of course, stoked and egged on the whole way by a lot of these politicians. And I think Trump was right to finally get on the phone with the mayor and the governor. If they want things to change on the ground, they also have to give something. And hopefully Homan can broker that.
Hey, Guy, I never heard the governor or the mayor say, hey, I want peaceful protests. What I saw outside that hotel was not peaceful. Hey, I want peaceful protests. But I just heard you bit off the finger of one of the agents. That's not what I'm talking about. They have not called out anything. They've made ridiculous statements like this is about love and sticking up for your neighbor. I looked at Mike Schellenberger last night and says, I would say that almost nobody on the street knows any illegal immigrant. They're out there organized, some of which getting paid. And we see some of the transmissions, taking down license plate, moving like not like a militia, as a militia. Meanwhile, it leads us all towards a government shutdown. So they're talking about to deprive ICE of money. They're not going to fund the DHS, which means no FEMA, which means a government shutdown, means no one gets paid, including the military. Do you think Democrats going to follow through on their threat?
Well, I think it's important to see what actually plays out in Minneapolis. I hope that finally the governor and the mayor are going to say, fine, you can have access to our jails. We'll do these transfers in an orderly fashion, and then you can pull back from the street operations. Homan has offered that. I hope they take the offer. That might impact what happens in Washington, D.C. Look, my understanding, Brian, is that ICE itself is funded for 3 more years. So if they were to shut things down over DHS, it would be purely performative to signal, especially to their base, we're mad about ICE. It would be their 2026 version of 2020's defund the police. And in the process, they would be impacting, yes, FEMA and airport security and members of the traveling public. Do they want to shut down the Democrats, our government, again for the second time in 2 years, this time over ICE funding that they can't even stop? Maybe they've decided that resistance is good politics for them no matter what, they're going to do it. I think it would be harmful and dumb.
I agree with you, Guy, but I also think they gain from hurting the Trump economy. Almost nothing is stopping this thing from taking off except the government shutdown. By the way, a snowstorm. Not a good time to stop emergency funding for the DHS. Guy Benson, thanks so much. Look forward to seeing you, listening to your radio show today. Appreciate it.
Hey everyone, I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DDR. Also, don't forget to subscribe.
All righty. Let's see here.
Snap your W-2 and file your taxes 100% free. Plus, get your biggest refund. Roughly 37% of filers qualify. Simple Form 1040 returns only. File now.
Finding new adventures. Is.
Welcome back. China's top military general accused of leaking Beijing's nuclear weapon secrets to the United States, allegedly accepting bribes for official acts. The general considered Xi Jinping's most trusted military ally. This reportedly is part of a larger aggressive dismantling of China's military leadership, as Xi Jinping supposedly is cracking down on corruption and disloyalty. Some experts questioning whether this is impacting China's military readiness. Joining me now is Gatestone Institute Senior Fellow Gordon Chang. Gordon, great to see you. You know, this is a story that you and I have touched on over the years, but I'm wondering what you think about this now. Because if Xi Jinping has been weakened, which we know that he has since having that mini stroke years ago, why is he taking out, why is his lead military guy being taken out? Is that his decision or the Politburo's decision? What are your thoughts on this story?
Yeah, I think that General Zhang Yashao, who was the #1 uniformed officer, first vice chairman of the Communist Party Central Military Commission, was Xi Jinping's adversary in the military. And I think Zhang was actually taking out Xi Jinping's loyalists in the military, which he did last year. What we do know, and there's a lot we don't, but what we do know is that the Communist Party right now is in turmoil. And the military is not that ready because the senior leadership has been annihilated, as someone said. I don't actually think that Zhang Yashao passed nuclear weapons secrets to the U.S., but I think that clearly right now we are in a state of turmoil in China and anything can happen.
Oh, so you think that was made up, that they said that he passed secrets to the United States, but that was just a way to take him down?
That's my guess, because when you think about it, Zhang really didn't have that many ways of contacting the U.S. and passing along technical data. You know, anything is possible, Maria, but I think that this is an allegation that was made to justify General Zhang's arrest. Now, right now, we're going to find out a lot more as time progresses, but at this point, we don't know that.
Now, we know that there's the Davidson window where Admiral Davidson had issued an expectation that China would go into Taiwan and try to take over by 2027 or in 2027. Is that still your expectation, or do you have new thoughts about a weakened military in China right now?
I was never a big fan of the Davidson window because I think there were a lot of internal reasons why China would not invade Taiwan even before this recent series of arrests. But this recent series of arrests means that the top leadership of the Chinese military is now gone. And I don't know how you can launch a combined air, land, sea operation in such a state. But this doesn't mean that we are free from war, threat of war, because Xi Jinping has a lot of incentive, more incentive now, to keep tensions high. And if he miscalculates and one of these incidents goes wrong, he can't de-escalate. So I still think the risk of war is high, but not for the reason that Admiral Davidson thought.
All right, let me move on to Canada because President Trump issued a stark warning to Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney over Canada's new trade deal with China, threatening 100% tariffs on Ottawa if something is signed. Now, I was in Davos, and Carney gave a speech in Davos, and it very much tried to undermine the president and the United States. So the president writes on Truth Social, if Governor Carney thinks that he's going to make Canada a drop-off port for China to send goods and products into the United States, he's sorely mistaken. China will eat Canada alive, completely devour it, including the destruction of their businesses, social fabric, and general way of life. Gordon, what is your reaction to this deal that Carney is doing with China?
Well, first of all, this deal is not good for Canada from a number of different perspectives. But the problem here for Carney is that in 2024, which is the last year for which we have full trade data, Canada ran a $62.0 billion trade surplus against the United States. Last year, it was probably somewhere in the neighborhood of $45 billion. But Canada's still in the surplus. Now, we run a services surplus against Canada, but overall trade surplus, they are in the good and we're in the bad. So that is going to be the defining factor. Canada needs the United States. We don't need Canada as much. I do think, though, that President Trump should tone down the rhetoric because we do need good relations with Ottawa because we have that long undefended border, and we do not need an Ottawa that is more aligned with Beijing than it is with Washington. And that is the state right now. So we've got a serious problem that we got to deal with.
Well, Liz Peek, jump in. I'm not sure if you saw Carney's speech, Liz, but when he was talking in Davos, he was talking about getting tough against the United States. He used the phrase, take the sign down. In other words, don't make believe we don't know what's happening. And it was a big talker in Davos. The president knew his customer, recognized that he knows that he's got to do a trade deal with the United States, and they're doing bilaterals now. It's no longer USMCA, where Canada and Mexico will be in the same deal. Canada will have its own separate deal with the United States.
So, Gordon, it seems to me that one of the more aggressive things from Carney's speech was the idea that China was going to be invited to bring EVs into Canada. The reason that's aggressive is America, the United States, has really defended itself against cheap, well-made EVs that could swamp our market. So how do you interpret this? I mean, was this just sort of an insulting thing to do? As you mentioned, we are very intertwined with Canada in terms of production and in particular in the auto trade. So how do you read this?
Well, certainly we are intertwined. You have all sorts of American manufacturers are in Canada, in Ontario. And those production lines are integrated. The EVs, President Biden in January 2025 prohibited the import of Chinese EVs into our country because they're rolling spy machines. If Canada is going to allow 49,000 of them into Canada in the first year, I hope the Trump administration goes through with its threat and prevents Canadians from driving them across the border, because we should not be allowing a surveillance of American roads by China through the back door, in other words, through Canada. So I hope the president goes forward and makes that clear to Carney.
We should point out the obvious, and that is that, China is weakening, Canada is weakening, and the president is empowering the United States, building up the military, building up shipbuilding, getting supply chains back here. The Department of War releasing America's National Defense Strategy for 2026, striking a new tone on China as the U.S. puts focus on defense efforts closer to home. The Pentagon writes this: the Department of War will seek and open a wider range of military-to-military communications with the People's Liberation Army, with a focus on supporting strategic stability with Beijing, as well as de-confliction and de-escalation more generally. Our goal is simple: to prevent anyone, including China, from being able to dominate U.S. or our allies. The president is still pushing for a deal to acquire Greenland, warning of Chinese influence in the Arctic, a mechanism, the Golden Dome, to stop any potential missiles coming from China at any point, or Russia. Gordon, your reaction?
Well, first of all, it's nice to say that we're going to try to have a stable relationship with China. But the point is, China's political system is in turmoil, and I don't know how you have any sort of relationship with a regime like that. So China is going to make itself a priority, regardless of what we say in our strategy documents. China's going to provoke us, and it is going to become the top priority. So this is nice that we say this, but it doesn't take into account the reality of what's occurring in East Asia right now. And yes, it's good that we have that Greenland Framework Agreement. That's a real start to the defense of the American homeland, and indeed all of North America.
Very important. The president walked us through that last week, and that.
So this is up to date, right? Mostly. I mean, last job we used this tool.
What is?
Welcome back. Good morning, movement. This morning is NVIDIA and. Welcome back. China's top military general.
You could meet sort of, people.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the digestive enzyme complex. This will help to break up proteins, carbohydrates, and lipids, reduce the load on your pancreas. It'll help you to digest and absorb your nutrients. This is super important, especially if you're 40 years of age or older. Taking the digestive enzyme complex will reduce the stress on your pancreas. So, digestive enzyme complex also has bromelain. Bromelain is an enzyme to help break up clots. It's fibrinolytic. And the proteolytic enzymes in here help to break up glycoproteins. Super important, especially during the winter season. So please, go to my store, get the digestive enzyme complex. Lignans soaks up free radicals and brings down inflammation, helps to boost up your immune system and your endocrine system. And by soaking up free radicals and bringing down inflammation, you're helping your cardiovascular health and brain function. Turmeric also brings down inflammation and soaks up free radicals. Helps with the immune system. Helps with the cardiovascular system. Helps with brain function. By keeping inflammation down in the microenvironment for your neurons are healthier. Stack it with the lignans for max benefit. Slow down the aging process. So a great stack here, lignans, the turmeric, and the digestive enzyme complex. So please go to my store, use discount 5, all caps, discount 5. You get $5 off any order. Click the link in the description, go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com. All right. This is Times Radio talking about the Xi takes control of Chinese military, signs of internal clash at top of the party. So I want to get a perspective more from the European side, the British side.
On the fringes of power, and they would sort of tell you what their interpretation of events was. Under Xi Jinping, that's all gone. There's no one-on-one meeting with anybody in the Chinese apparatus. No one's allowed to tell you anything. Interesting. All you can do is deduce from what's said in state media, and occasionally you do see these leaks.
Let's talk a bit more about China. Actually, who is the most powerful man in the world? You might say Donald Trump with some justification, but there must surely be a case for President Xi Jinping of China. Xi rules over more than 1 billion citizens and doesn't need to bother with getting elected. Now he's got even more powerful. Xi has purged China's most senior general and taken control himself of the military. The Times China correspondent Richard Spencer joins us now from Beijing. Richard, morning to you.
Good morning.
Why has he done this?
Good question. It depends who you believe. Many different versions of this story floating around. I heard rumors in the summer. Well, I think a lot of us in China heard rumors floating around that Xi and this General Zhang Youxia were at loggerheads. There were even reports of attempted coups and wild stories of things going on in the leadership compound here in Beijing. We tended to scan them because they were unsourced and just gossip, but often there's something going on, even if it's not quite what was said. So what's clear is that there is some sort of clash between these two guys. President Xi clearly felt his authority was being undermined. The official version is corruption, but then that's the official version for everything. And rather unusually, the announcements surrounding this have referred to the fact that Zhang is accused of effectively challenging Xi's authority, which is against the rules in China that the party commands the gun, the party commands the army. So it was definitely a clash one-on-one of some sort. We're not quite sure what over, but you can't have that at the top of the party.
And there's a whiff of an accusation, again, who knows how true it is, that this guy might have been in some sort of relationship with the US.
Yeah, so there's a story in the Wall Street Journal that came out last night saying that he had been accused as general of leaking nuclear secrets, technical nuclear details of nuclear weapons to America. And I think that's possibly, according to the Wall Street Journal, what the other generals, the surviving generals, have been told. That doesn't mean to say necessarily that anyone actually believes that. I mean, it's very hard, actually, for the head of the US, the Chinese army, to leak secrets to the Americans. I mean, you don't just go and pitch up at the US embassy with a case full of secrets if you're the head of the army in China. All the leaders are very closely surveilled. But it may be that this general is very popular. He's one of the last surviving soldiers in the Chinese army who'd actually seen active service. He fought on the front lines in a war with Vietnam in the 70s. He was very popular, apparently, a tough old bird, as they say. And so it may have been they decided they had to spin a yarn about him being in league with the Americans to just to the ranks.
Richard, you can answer this question as carefully as you like, and I really do mean that. How easy is it for you to report on this stuff? You're in Beijing. These are stories about the Beijing government. This is an example of Xi accruing more power to himself already, as we were saying, probably one of the most powerful men in the world, if not the most powerful man. Is this easy to report on? Is it straightforward? How easy is it a gig?
I mean, in terms of, am I at risk for one of these things? No, not at all. I don't think so. We've been reporting, speculation about what's going on in the Polar Bureau for years. What's dangerous if you actually, are leaked something
I see.
very secret. So the Wall Street Journal reported that story. She's based in America, has been for 5 years. Does raise questions of how the information leaks out to America. But in terms of how straightforward it is, not at all. I mean, this is an incredibly opaque system. There is now, even more than 20 years ago, when I first started covering China, you could then meet sort of junior officials on your own and have a chat. They wouldn't leak you information particularly, but you were able to have a sort of fairly frank conversation. You could meet sort of, people on the fringes of power, and they would sort of tell you what their interpretation of events was. Under Xi Jinping, that's all gone. There's no one-on-one meeting with anybody in the Chinese apparatus. No one's allowed to tell you anything.
Interesting.
All you can do is deduce from what's said in state media, and occasionally you do see these leaks abroad.
Yeah. Just finally, what do you think about Starmer coming? Is this big news there? Is it positive news there? Have they even mentioned it? Where is that?
No, it's not been officially confirmed. Slightly bizarrely, on both sides, there's no official confirmation going. Everyone knows he is. The foreign ministry have been asked about it. It will be good news for China. They didn't like the fact that the Liz Truss government and the Tories, turned very strongly against China, attacked China very publicly, wouldn't go to China. Since Labour's been in power, they've resumed sort of the conversation. They've sent the David Lammy when he was Foreign Secretary, and Rachel Reeves as Chancellor have already paid visits. And of course, they got their new embassy in London, so they're feeling quite positive about Britain at the moment. What Britain gets out of it, of course, is another matter. That's a bit harder to see at the moment.
Yeah, well, we might come back to it as the week progresses, Richard. You can give us what the Beijing position is on all of this. Great to speak to you. Thank you for joining us.
That's a pleasure.
That's Richard Spencer, the Times China correspondent in Beijing.
That's so interesting that what Richard was saying there about how you report in China, because I always wonder how easy it is.
Yeah, and presumably, if someone said, I'm going to leak you this, you'd have to think to yourself, as a journalist, I really want this, but where am I going to be 24 hours later?
I also often think, I don't think I've ever had anybody in my whole career say, I'm going to leak you this.
Oh.
Sometimes it comes and they don't realise what they've got.
Yeah, okay, that's okay, yeah.
And sometimes they do realise what they've got. And
But if you were in China and suddenly they give you something that they didn't know what they've got, you'd have to think about it, wouldn't you? Like, do I need to get out of the country before I start reporting?
yeah, you probably need to, but I don't know how easy it would be to verify, because if somebody leaks you something, you still have to verify.
People saying that people won't talk to them anymore.
Well, that's what I mean.
Yeah.
So it'd be really quite hard to verify the accuracy of something that has been leaked to you, and especially without setting off lots of alarm bells.
Yeah,
It's a very brave job.
I think
reporting
he's
from
so
countries like
good
that.
at it as well, Richard Spencer. He's one of those Times guys that I always like listening to because he always tells you stuff that you didn't know.
I know I touched on this last night, but I've got to come back to the purge that China's dictator Xi Jinping has just made of his top general. And not just him. Because the deeper you look into it, the more ominous and extraordinary it is. And just like Stalin, actually, before World War II, Xi has conducted a huge purge of his army and defense officials. Although, unlike Stalin, he hasn't had them all shot yet. His regime has just accused Xi's most senior general and a longtime friend, Zhang Yaojia, of extraordinary crimes like, revealing nuclear secrets to the US, taking bribes, fostering political problems, whatever that means. Add to that all the others accused of crimes and purged. You have a look, if you do a diagram of everyone who was in the last Central Military Commission, headed by Xi himself, the top military body, almost all of them have been arrested or disappeared. And that's just the most senior army officials, also gone are more junior ones, including the senior officers of China's rocket force, which oversees the strategic nuclear missiles, as well as a defense minister, he's been disappeared, a foreign minister, he's been disappeared over the past couple of years. It's extraordinary. The kind of purge you haven't seen in China for decades. Now, this could show that Xi Jinping is cementing his power, or it could show that he's having to fight off a challenge. Who knows? Joining me is Peter Jennings, a former Deputy Secretary for Strategy in the Defense Department.
Now, Chang, that was interviewed on Fox News, he's coming from the perspective that President Xi is weak and that he's not going to be able to do operations against Taiwan. What my concern is that a lot of times when a dictator feels that threatened, they try to consolidate power and they make a move against another nation, such as Taiwan. So, which is it? President Xi is too weak to do operations, or is President Xi having internal conflict within the party, the CCP, and that he's going to flex his muscles and go against Taiwan? I'm not sure. I'm concerned. I'm really concerned because the U.S. military has spread itself thin with moving strike groups to Venezuela and moving strike groups to Iran. I would say if I put it in the probability category, there's probably a 70% chance that Xi can't consolidate power in the near term enough to be able to have successful operations against Taiwan. About 70% chance of that. 30% chance that he consolidates power enough to be able to push the PLA to do his bidding in Taiwan.
adjunct fellow at the APA. Peter Jennings, thank you for joining us. What does this mean, given that, particularly given that she has repeatedly warned his army to be prepared for war next year, the year that she wants to take over democratic Taiwan, which she claims is China? A purge like this seems to me to leave the army weaker, or is it more malleable?
Well, it's certainly more malleable, and you're quite right to point out that this is Stalinist in its origin. In fact, Stalin was one of Xi Jinping's favourite authors as a teen. He read deeply into Marxist-Leninism, but particularly Stalin. So he knows about purges. And Xi has been using purges across the military, the intelligence agencies, and the Communist Party ever since he's been General Secretary from 2012. What I think is particularly interesting about the military is that I think there's more to it than just destabilising the generals and making sure that an alternate power base isn't created. I think there's also a fight going on where the generals are being resistant to some degree to Xi's direction to say, be ready for war, for an invasion of Taiwan in 2027. As far as General Zhang is concerned, effectively the head of the military that's just been purged now, the key crime that is being written about in Chinese language papers is to say that he was too slow in implementing what Xi Jinping wanted in terms of military reforms, and this was damaging PLA combat capability. So there's two elements. There's the purging to make sure that Xi Jinping is on top and no one can question him or come near him or present an alternate source of power. And then there's a fight about how well prepared is the People's Liberation Army to do what Xi has directed it to do, and that's be ready for war by 2027. They clearly don't feel that they can be, and Xi is trying to make sure that he'll have leadership in place that will at least say to him, yes, leader, that's what we can do.
That is very ominous, because as you're absolutely right. The top general is just purged, is the only one apparently with real war experience, having been part of the Chinese invasion of Vietnam. And the only reason that'd be in his way is if they were saying no to his yes, be ready to attack. That is ominous, Peter. Meanwhile, given that, there's something else that worries me. China has tightened its influence on Taiwan's main opposition parties, it seems. It very much seems, because those opposition parties, which aren't really as independent-minded as the government, independent from China, they have combined to stop the Taiwanese government from passing a bill to spend an extra $60 billion to protect the island from a Chinese attack. What's going on there?
Well, there is and always has been a fifth column of Communist Party influence in Taiwan, which seems now to be coming back up to the surface. In terms of opinion polls and attitudes of the Taiwanese population, particularly the young, Andrew, there's 80%, 90% support for the status quo, for Taiwan to remain not under the control of the Chinese Communist Party in Beijing. There's only a handful of octogenarians, for the most part, that might have a different view about that. And yet all of a sudden we now see these organised groups coming forward which seems to be challenging the position of the Taiwanese government. I think that can be traced back to mainland influence, Communist Party influence and money. And it reflects the fact that Taiwan has two huge fights on its hands. It's got to be prepared to defend itself against China's military aggression, but it also has to deal with a very serious interference, domestic interference and foreign influencing threat. And China is pushing this as hard as it possibly can. This all goes back to Xi Jinping's 2027 deadline, be ready for war. And the mainland is using every instrument at its disposal to try and make Taiwan weak, because they'd much rather take it through capitulation than actually having to fight a military operation for it.
Yes, and meanwhile, the US aircraft carrier Abraham Lincoln has reached waters not that far, the Indian Ocean, not that far from Iran, so that we could expect a war there very soon. Peter Jennings, it's a very uncertain world. Thank you so much for your time.
Please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, and get the Bloomberg Boost This will help multiple systems. It'll help with brain function, cardiovascular health, musculature, energy levels, and speed up your metabolism. If you take this every day, you're going to slow down the aging process, boost up your immune system and your endocrine system. So please go to my store, get the Boomer Boost, very high quality. You can also stack this with the Heirloom Barley and the Gladiator Barley to increase the efficiency of controlling your A1C levels. C60, you can get it in a 2 ounce, a 4 ounce, or an 8 ounce configuration. You can get it in avocado oil, MCT coconut oil, and also extra virgin olive oil. C60 needs to be in an oil for proper absorption. Take a teaspoon a day every day. It'll soak up free radicals, help the health of your mitochondria. You'll have more ATP. The cells and the tissues will perform better. C60 will help to bring down inflammation, bring down the stress on the cell and the tissues, soak up free radicals. By doing that, the cells will perform better. You'll have lots of ATP. And what will happen is the tissues and organ systems will perform the way they're supposed to, and the aging process starts to slow down. Your immune system will improve, your endocrine system will improve, your glands will improve, brain function will improve because the neurons will have more ATP, your mitochondria will be healthier. At the vascular level, you're soaking up free radicals and bringing down inflammation, you're reducing plaque formation. So please go to my store, take a teaspoon a day every day. This will also help the basal layer of your skin so you look younger, that your skin will be healthier. This stacks really well with resveratrol, but it also stacks really well with the Boomer Boost. Now, take this every day, teaspoon a day. Take it preferably on an empty stomach, especially in the morning, for best absorption. If you work out, take it before you work out. You'll recover quicker and you're going to be soaking up the free radicals that your workout generates. By taking a very strong antioxidant, which this is 1,000 times stronger than vitamin C, you're going to soak up free radicals, bring down inflammation, bring down stress on your tissues, and slow down the aging process. Now, if you've been paying attention to what I've been saying throughout this broadcast, we're targeting inflammation. You want to bring down that inflammation and boost up that immune system and slow down the aging process. So bringing down inflammation is really important. Soaking up free radicals is really important, and boosting up energy levels. And when you target those, your other organ systems will start to go into homeostasis and you're going to slow down the aging process. So please go to my store, the-studio-reykjavik.com, use discount 5, get the C60, get the Boomer Boost, use discount 5, all caps, discount 5. Click the link in the description to get to my website, the-studio-reykjavik.com. That's the end of my broadcast. Thank you for listening. Please get healthy. The products that I have are very high quality. They are what I take to slow down the aging process and to maintain my health. Thank you for listening and have a nice day.